A hiss of cool fog rolled over the stony promontory where the three dragons had made their eyrie. The wall, a pale ribbon to the south, glimmered under the hushed late summer moon. But here, just short of the black cliffs of the frozen shore, the air tasted of ancient winters unrecorded by maesters. Balerian's wings rattled as he settled upon a limestone spur, tail flicking in mild agitation. The conqueror himself dismounted, black plate clicking softly, while his gaze swept the horizon as though he expected the edges of the world to fold in on him. Behind him, Visenya slid from Vagar's shoulder with a swordsman's grace, her gray braid snapping in the wind. Rhaenys landed moments later, astride Merax's, laughter already spilling from her lips at the stark grandeur surrounding them. "Giants," she said, eyes bright as sunrise over Blackwater Bay. "You can smell them on the air. Whetstone, hoarfrost, and musk. This is their realm. Their stories called to me in Pentos, long before ever I touched Merax's scales." Aegon cast her a sidelong look, as though weighing the value of her wonder, yet he did not chide her for it. All the free cities had whispered of the true north since Nymeria fled Royn, but what navigator pierced the shivering sea far enough to spill the tale south? If giants endured, they did so in the blank margins of maps, where even Bravosi chart-makers feared to scratch an ochre line. Still, dreams had plagued the sisters, Visenya's austere, Rhaenys molten with adventure, each vision ending in the same portent, a hammer-blow echo booming across endless snow, dragons screaming skyward, their fires snuffed. So Aegon listened, and where he listened, he acted. 3 months after setting the 7 kingdoms to heal, he declared a hunt into the roof of the world, not for sport, but to unravel prophecy before prophecy unraveled him. The earth trembled beneath them. Visenya knelt, palm pressed to shale. The vibration came again, slow and rhythmic, like a giant heart beating beneath the crust. She rose without expression, dark sister naked in her hand. "To the west," she said. Aegon vaulted back onto Balerion. "High," he commanded, though the dragon hardly needed telling. Night's black wing flooded the sky, followed a breath later by Vagar's smoky bronze and Merax's silver white. They climbed past ragged clouds until the sea became a pewter ribbon below. There, to the edge of sight, torches glimmered, not scattered like wildling fires, but aligned in columns, far too ordered for clans of cannibals and crow killers. When Rhaenys laughed again, it was softer, anxious. "Who teaches giants formation?" "Something older than men," Visenya replied. They banked toward the lights. Closer, the torches resolved into trunks of ironwood, each ablaze atop a pyre, each carried in the fist of a figure twice the height of a Dornish warhorse. Giants, 20 at least, marched abreast across the packed snow of a glacier tongue. Their hair was bleached to ropes by wind, their eyes glittered like ice-blue garnets. Across broad chests they wore harnesses of mammoth hide, but no mail, and in their free hands gleamed weapons wrought of bone the size of oars. Yet it was what strode before them that robbed Rhaenys' breath. A beast as tall as a watchtower, horned like the aurochs of old Gis, but scaled in thick gray plates, tusked jaws trailing cold steam. A living mountain. Visenya's hand cut the air and Vagar peeled away to the flank. Merax's answered, spiraling to starboard, forming the triple-clawed talon that had broken hosts from Blackwater to Goldengrove. Far below, giants raised their torches and roared as one voice, a sound like avalanche. Balerion folded his wings, diving. Black fire roared from his throat, a torrent of night-blue flame that lit the glacier in ghastly hues. Where it struck, ice boiled to vapor, but only for heartbeats. The colossal beast leading the giants threw up a forelimb, and the flame splashed harmlessly off the mineral hide, guttering to sparks. Balerion screamed, furious. Merax's plummeted next, silver fire washing over the glacier's flank, gouging trenches 10 men deep. Giants staggered, some aflame. Smoke rolled. Then the giant line crouched and drove ironwood torches into the slush. From each pyre, a pale ribbon of fire blossomed. Yet it was not flame at all but a blinding aura, cold and white, weaving into a lattice stretching skyward. Visenya felt Vagar flinch as though lashed. Her nostrils filled with the scent of iron and winter roses. The lattice thickened, a net of living frost. Balerion struck it head-on. A blizzard roar rippled outward. The dragon's momentum died, and for a sick moment, he hung suspended like an insect trapped in resin. Aegon's shout blurred against the wind. Balerion beat his wings, but the net pulled inward, strands tightening, crackling with otherworldly energy. Black scales frayed where they touched, edges frosting over. Visenya slashed Dark Sister across her palm. Blood spattered Vagar's neck. She whispered a Valyrian word, sharper than steel. Vagar answered in kind, exhaling wildfire so pure it cast shadows upon the moon. The lattice blazed green where it met the breath, but its weave did not break. Instead, the glow intensified, threads thickening like ice upon a barge line, enveloping Meraxes as she wheeled to aid her brother. Rhaenys screamed Meraxes' name. Silver wings beat against enshrouding frost. With each stroke, a thunderclap bellowed. Yet the net only constricted tighter, bleeding heat, drinking flame until the sky echoed with brittle snapping sounds. When scales cracked, chunks clattered to the glacier below like night-sheathed meteors. On the ice, the giants began to chant. Words older than the children, older than the first men, rolled in heavy syllables down valleys of snow. The massive beast stomped forward, tusks raking air, and struck the lattice with one horn. Blue-white energy rippled. Dragons howled. A lattice strand snapped at last, but Balerion shrieked in agony, smoke billowing from his maw as the magic gnawed at tongue and flame sacks alike. Fire sputtered uselessly. Blood, thick, black and hissing, dribbled from the corners of his jaws. Aegon, sensing death coil about them, drew black fire. The conqueror's sword, forged in Valyria long before his house was crowned in blood and flame, answered his grip by pulsing red along the glyph-carved fuller. He drove the blade through Balerion's neck ridge, no wound, but a conduit. Dragon and rider roared together. Red fire, the color of shadow-soaked rubies, leapt forth, shredding 2 lattice strands. For one staggering instant, the net sagged, and torn heat flooded the sky. Meraxes burst free, silver scales steaming, Rhaenys clinging to a spike by one hand. But Vagar and Balerion remained bound, frost knitting faster than the dragons could burn it. On the glacier, giants knelt. Their chant shifted key, the roar dropping to a pulsed undertone, as though the land itself joined the chorus. The horned beast reared and slammed both tusks into the ice. From the impact point, a new spell coursed up the lattice, pale strands turning solid, crystalline, traps that leached color from the night sky. Visenya felt cold chew her marrow through Vagar's scales. The bronze dragon faltered. Rhaenys steadied Meraxes and dove low, using the bulk to shield her sister. She hurled a spear, ancient Dornish make seized at Sunspear, which whistled through night to strike a giant square in the throat. The creature toppled, bleeding white instead of red. The chant cracked, wavering. 2 more spears found targets. The light in the lattice flickered. Aegon saw the shift and urged Balerion into a roll, hacking at strands while crimson fire boiled forth. Scales continued to fail, but the black dread shook free enough for one battered wing stroke. They climbed yards, lashes of frost trailing like chains. Visenya, eyes silver and distant, read the rhythm inside the chant. Each consonant aligned to a star unseen, each pause mapped to a heartbeat of the stone colossus. She tasted the final pattern and whispered again. 3 syllables. Soft as falling ash. Dark Sister glowed thin and thirsty. She raised the blade and cut not at lattice or giant, but at the night itself. The slash opened a wound in the world. Utter silence, starless as the doomfire craters of Valyria, and from that wound spilled a darkness colder than ice, older than memory. The lattice nearest her withered like autumn spiderweb punched by a boot. The chant collapsed into scattered roars. 15 giants turned and ran, but 5 held their ground, slamming ironwood torches down like pikes. Blue flames surged anew. Visenya whipped Dark Sister in an arc, carving glyphs in midair. Shards of the void wound coalesced into spears and hurled downward, skewering 2 giants through spine and hearthstone. The others broke, fleeing with bellows of grief. Yet the horned colossus did not falter. It charged across the glacier, each step a quaking. Meraxes surged to intercept, jaws open. But the beast did not fear dragon fire. It dove beneath, tusks ripping across silver belly. Rhaenys screamed as the world turned sideways. Meraxes crashed, wings flailing, throwing snow plumes 100 feet high. Blood sprayed the air in vermilion curtains, instantly freezing to crimson sleet. Aegon bellowed Rhaenys' name. Balerion, enraged beyond thought, folded into a stoop that split the wind. He struck the colossus broadside. Horn and scale met ancient obsidian claws. They locked, titans rending. The beast's tail, armored like a ship's ram, smashed Balerion's flank, cracking ribs thick as wine casks. Balerion's teeth clamped around the monster's shoulder, crunching plates. Steam, black and white, burst between them. Visenya dove past the struggling behemoths, landing beside Merax's torn side. The silver dragon heaved, trying to stand. Rhaenys hung limp in her saddle straps, blood running from scalp and ear. Visenya cut her sister free, lips bloodless, but eyes still measured. She tugged off one gauntlet, laid a hand to Merax's wound, and uttered a low chant, this one soft and grieving. Wildfire flared across palm and wound alike. Tissue hissed, cauterized. Merax's eyes rolled white. One final scream echoed into stars, then the mighty neck sagged. Dragons, die heart. Kind. Visenya felt the life pulse flutter out, an echo that rattled her bones. She lifted Rhaenys and leapt back to Vhagar's neck. Iron-cold calm gripped her. She strapped her sister before her and whispered to the bronze dragon. They launched, arcs of frost, trailing wings. Balerion still wrestled the horned one, yet blood smoked from his nostrils. Aegon slashed with black fire, carving bright wounds across the beast's cheek. But obsidian scales cracked. Sword edge nicked. The colossus reared and drove both tusks under Balerion's chest, hoisting the dragon bodily off the ice. Bones snapped like sapsticks. Balerion shrieked, green fire spraying. The colossus roared as flame seared eyes, yet it held on, shaking the dragon to bleed more bones loose. Vhagar screamed defiance, barreling down. Visenya hurled Dark Sister. The sword turned comet bright, drilling through the colossus' skull to the hilt. The beast shuddered, tusks spasmed, releasing Balerion. Aegon spurred his dragon back. Crimson flame boiling from jaws to engulf the sword's entry. Visenya caught Dark Sister as it blasted free, blade white hot. But the cost came due. Balerion's chest heaved ragged, one wing hanging like torn sailcloth. A gout of blood erupted with every breath. The conqueror faced Visenya across a scant 50 yards of air, eyes silver with horror. Below, the surviving giants gathered at the lattice's wreckage. Their torches guttered, magic flickering. Yet the chant revived in cracked voices, a last gambit. Lattice strands still clung like vines to both crippled dragons. Frost snaked, vines thickening, tightening. Visenya looked at Rhaenys limp across her lap, at Aegon's drawn face, at Balerion's ruin, and made her choice. Dark Sister flashed once more, not toward the giants, but into Vhagar's own breast. The dragon convulsed. Visenya spoke a word of binding. Bronze scales rippled with seething inner light. She tore the blade free. With her other hand she pressed Rhaenys' bloody palm to the wound. Aegon shouted, fury turning to dread. Visenya answered only with a sad tilt of her head, and spurred Vhagar into a climb. Higher and higher they rose, wings shredding air, frost trailing in feathered plumes. Giants looked up, chanting paused, as though sensing the sky crack under some unseen strain. At the apex, Vhagar set tail to stars and dove. Visenya held Rhaenys close, eyes closed, while the dragon's entire body glowed from within, molten bronze edging to white. They fell like a second sun. Half-conscious giants scattered, lattice strands collapsing as the incantation unraveled. The moment Vhagar struck the ice, the dragon exploded. Fire and magic, blood and sorrow in one single detonation. The glacier shattered. Aegon, still astride Balerion, felt the shockwave surge outward in concentric rings. Ice cliffs ruptured. Seawater geysered up, instantly freezing into baroque towers that toppled back into thunderous surf. Giants perished in shards of their own making. The colossal beast, sword-torn and fire-blinded, reeled and toppled backward into a canyon fissure, bellowing until boiling brine drowned its voice. When the noise faded, only wind remained, keening across ruin. Balerion lay half-submerged in a slush lake, sides heaving. Aegon dismounted on a floating floe, knee-deep in freezing water. His armor steamed. He looked across the shattered field for his sisters. Only fragments of bronze and silver scale bobbed upon the crimson-stained brine, steaming like tears shed by the earth. Above, the aurora born of shattered sorcery writhed across the heavens in wounded hues. Violet lightning shot with veins of sickly green, ribbons of red unfurling like banners of grief. Its glow revealed the giants' corpses strewn among blackened torches. No chant rose, no sigh. All breath in the true north had been stolen to feed a single inferno. Balerion's low rumble drew Aegon's gaze. One great eye regarded him, pain-clouded yet alive. The conqueror pressed his brow to that scaled cheek and whispered promises no tongue would record. He bound wounds with strips of his own cloak, then worked iron chains into makeshift harness, willing soul and sinew to sustain dragon and rider both. Days blurred. The glacier, broken from the mainland, drifted south, driven by currents older than Westeros. Through blizzards and bitter wind, Aegon tended Balerion, feeding him strips of giant flesh frozen stiff, melting snow on heated chainmail to dribble into parched throat. Night after night, he watched the aurora fade to tattered wisps. Sometimes he dreamt of Rhaenys laughing, of Visenya's stern smile softening as she handed him Dark Sister, clean of blood and sorrow. Each dawn he woke to cold and the creaking of ice. Near the 15th day, gulls circled overhead. Sea spray tasted of salt rather than iron. From the flow's edge he glimpsed greenish swells and knew warm currents had found them. On the 17th dawn, a black silhouette appeared upon the horizon. Gulltown's watchtower, flags half-masted. Fisherfolk in coracles came upon the drift. They crossed themselves at sight of the ragged king and his wounded monster, but ferried word ashore. Aegon had returned from the end of the world. When the dragon gate opened to admit the conqueror, Balerion limping behind, King's Landing fell to stunned silence. Aegon, gaunt and frost-burned, strode crimson-streaked stones with eyes hollowed to bright coals. No lord dared speak. No septon offered prayer. They parted like reeds before a storm. He mounted the iron throne trembling with grief, black fire across his knees. For 3 days he spoke with no one. Ravens flew to every keep. Aegon would address a realm in mourning. On the 4th dawn, all who held title or oath gathered under the shattered dragon skulls in the throne room. There a king rose not to speak of conquest or tribute, but of loss. He told them of giants' hymns that froze flame, of sisters who traded life for life, of dragons gone to ash so the realm might sleep untroubled by the north wind's teeth. He named Visenya Shieldbreaker, Rhaenys Sky Song, vowed their memories would be sung as long as tongues dared shape words. He declared the true north beyond mortal reach, a waste cursed by powers too ancient to bind. No bannered host would march past the wall again. No dragon would rise above its shadow. The last of Valyria's children would guard realms of men, but they would not trespass the elder graves. Then he lifted black fire and drove it point down into the dais beside his throne, a sword red as the blood frosting its fuller. It rang through silent hall like a funeral bell. Balerion, chained in the courtyard, echoed the note with a somber rumble. When the last vibration died, Aegon's voice returned, raw as a braided stone. Fire may conquer, but ice remembers. We are but a breath between giants. In the hush that followed, Lords who once wore oaths lightly felt the weight of them anew. Gods kept their silence. History, watching, sharpened its quills. Moon after moon, the realm whispered of the day dragons bowed to ghosts of winter. Minstrels sang of two queens who burned brighter than dawn and fell like shooting stars into seas of snow. Septons preached of hubris chastened. Maesters penned cautious lines warning future kings that maps tire of being redrawn by mortal hands. Yet somewhere beyond the wall, under auroras flickering like wounded crowns, shards of bronze and silver scale still lay entombed in blue ice, gleaming whenever moonlight dared slip between storm clouds. Giants, if any had survived, might one day kneel at those grave shards and remember fire that bled. Or perhaps they would forget, for even mountains forget the glaciers that carve them. As for Aegon, he ruled 31 more years. He took wives no more, fathered heirs but loved none so fiercely as those lost beneath northern stars. When he died, Balerion roared once, a sound that sank ships in Blackwater Bay and shattered chandeliers across the capital. The great dragon's wings never beat again. He lay beside the tomb of queens until bones bleached white as the frost that once chained him. And high above, on clear winter nights, a thin, ragged veil of pale light sometimes danced across the sky, barely a ghost of the aurora born of dragonfire and giant sorcery. Children called it the Sisters' Glory. Old men muttered it was merely sea ice particles caught in high winds. But sailors on midnight watch, seeing that faint shimmering banner, often bowed their heads, unsure why sorrow pricked their eyes. They bowed because somewhere in blood or memory they still heard a dragon's death cry echo off a glacier older than kings, and felt the tremor of a world learning, in that moment, that no fire burns so bright it cannot be quenched by the cold beyond. Oh. The chill returned most keenly at night, when the red candles guttered to stumps in the long windows of Maegor's Holdfast, and the wakeless corridors whispered with the echo of missing footfalls. Aegon would drift from the Iron Throne Room, an empty cathedral, after dusk, to the Rookery Tower, where ravens doze like soot-black fruit. He would stand against the parapet and stare northward across a continent he had mastered, toward a horizon that still tasted of defeat. Balerion, chained in the outer yard for his own aching safety, sometimes raised his head at the same hour, as though rider and mount shared a dream too raw for words. The monstrous dragon could manage only truncated flights now. A sweep to Dragonstone's blasted peak, a glide back over Blackwater Bay. When he tried to climb higher, something in his ribcage grated like mill wheels. Smoke leaked from the wound, and he wheeled down, trembling. Yet when the moon rode high and thin frost silvered the court, Aegon laid a gauntleted hand upon a scaled brow and felt the pulse of a will unbroken, matching his own in simple, stubborn rhythm. His court had changed as well. The conqueror, who had once welcomed the quarreling lords of 7 kingdoms, now presided over a hush. Rhaenys and Visenya had been mirrors, one bright, one dark, bending the light of a crown into manageable warmth. Without them, the crown's glare scorched. The small council learned to measure words alike a mason gauges mortar. Too little collapse, too much choking. Grand Maester Gawain had died the winter after the tragedy, his lungs filling with brine every night as though he too had drowned on the glacier. His successor, Maester Ormyle, possessed a face so mild and blank it angered the king merely by existing. Ormyle took to standing 3 paces farther away than custom required, to spare himself the heat of that silent scorn. The king's children grew beneath this shadow. Aenys, eldest, carried a bard's spirit wrapped in parchment-thin valor. He wrote songs to his lost mothers, coaxing them on cousin-forged lutes until the servants wept. Maegor, younger by 3 years, but already broader across the shoulder than most grown men, mocked the softness yet knew the melodies by heart. He sang them under his breath when he hammered at the yard pell, each blow keeping time to Rhaenys' sky song, Visenya's shield break. Princess Alyssa, youngest, escaped both steel and sorrow by wheedling her father's indulgence to study with the alchemists, for she burned to know how fire could be caged or magnified. Aegon did not forbid her. He feared little in those days, and least of all knowledge. Only once each year did the royal family gather entire at table. They called it the Vigil Feast, though no trumpets announced it. The hall doors closed. No servants remained within. Aegon poured the wine himself, and set 3 goblets at empty chairs. This for the sister who laughed at lightning. This for the sister whose eyes cut keener than spears. This for the dream both had woven from Dragonback. The children recited by rote the titles bestowed upon their mothers. Sky Song and Shield Break. Dot. Maegor's voice thundered. Aenys quavered but did not crack. Alyssa spoke barely a whisper, though her eyes blazed green like wildfire in the gloom. They drank. They ate morsels none tasted, and afterward Aegon dismissed his heirs without farewell. They left as silently as shades, while he remained to brood with 3 goblets untouched by any lips. He might have brooded until death had not the ravens borne rumor of northern tremors. The wall, rebuilt under a colossal levy of coin and labor after the War of Frost and Flame, shivered one dawn with tremors that shattered 2 towers along the night fort's long-abandoned parapet. Brothers reported ghost lights dancing among the cracked stones, pale as the lantis that once trapped dragons. Worse, hunters vanished in 3s and 4s along the Frostfang foothills. Their hounds returned sleeved in rime, eyes white, tongues black with frostbite. Lord Stark, whose grandsire had ridden a foaming stallion beside Aegon at Torhin's Bend, wrote in a hand gone arthritic but starkly clear, "The old gods stir beneath the snows, and something walks that is not man." A council summoned. Lords muttered of shadows on the edge of firelight, of footsteps that sank no deeper than a bird's despite a man's weight. Maester Ormalael produced brittle parchments retrieved from Skagos, ice-rhymed glyphs older than runes, showing stick figures crowned with antlers, and reptilian shapes pierced by spears of light. The resemblance to Visenya's lattice haunted every murmur. Only Maegor's voice broke the hush. "Give me 1,000 men and I will ride beyond the wall and find what crawls there." Aenys flinched. Alyssa gripped her quills. Aegon answered not at once, but walked to the window where the dragon's skulls stared empty-eyed along the hall. After a silence weighed by decades, he spoke 4 words. "We ride at dawn." Maegor rumbled assent. Aenys paled, protested. "Father, Balerion is." "Balerion can still breathe," the king said. "And Aegon still rules." The flight north required 8 stops, for the Black Dread could not cross half the realm on ruined wing. They littered the sky with charcoal clouds, each new landing ringed by soldiers whose armor gleamed like frost under the dragon's soot. Maegor at their head, mailed in plates of dusk blue. Aenys behind, haunting every order with cautions about rations, shelters, treaties with wildling clans driven desperate by rumor. Alyssa remained at King's Landing, sentenced unwillingly to watch the treasuries bleed silver into grain and iron. The king's daughter wept only when alone, her own wildfire experiments flickering forgotten. In the sleepless hours, she began tracing sigils upon parchment, icons of Valyrian fire, knots of the children, figures of a lattice drawn from memory and dread alike. By the time Balerion's tattered wings darkened the air above Castle Black, winter's first true gale bent the pines eastward. The brothers bowed low, but their eyes leapt from king to dragon, counting ribs, weighing hollows along the trembled flanks. They dared not question the wisdom of bringing a crippled nightmare to a wall of ice. They merely prepared shelters in the old king's tower, where stone still held warmth of generations. Aegon paced alone along the highest walkway, feeling the wall hum beneath snow-shod boots. The hum had a pattern, he realized with a jolt of old soldier's fear. It matched the heartbeat of the sea beyond, as though the world itself had become one vast drum, counting a march. Stark banners arrived by moonlight, Lord Brandon Snowmane upon a great white, his grandchildren clustering around swing-armed braziers. The old man knelt stiffly. "I recall another dawn when my father kissed your ring in surrender, your grace. 7, and the old gods willing, I will not kneel again, to you or any power born of winter." Aegon lifted the gray-flecked head and saw a glimmer there. Defiance edged by affection, the rare alloy that forges loyalty willing to weep. He placed Blackfire's pommel against the Lord's heart, in solemn salute. "Rise, and stand with me." They stood together 5 nights against the chill. Scouts returned with ice-rimed eyes. Spines stiff as boards, until the maesters boiled pinotar and elderflower, to thaw limbs and souls alike. Each spoke the same scraps. Crystalline trees grown in spirals where none had been a winter past. Canyons gutted by dragonfire, yet now bridged by blue-white sheets hard as iron, drums echoing beneath snow like hearts. None saw a living giant, but they found tracks. Hoofed? Clawed? 3 yards wide, sunk only a fingerbreadth. On the 6th night, the echoing drums ceased. A hush drowned the castle so thoroughly even the hearth seemed to swallow sparks before they could crack. Maegor dreamed of antlers raking a sky of glass. He woke with his sword drawn, sweat freezing across cheeks. Aenys dreamed of harpstrings snapping. Aegon dreamed of Rhaenys singing a lullaby grown sharp as spears. He followed her ghost along an unseen path, until he kneeled before a glacier spangled with scales of bronze and silver trapped beneath crystal. There her voice ebbed, her eyes dimmed, and when he touched the ice it melted beneath his palm, leaving only a void deeper than death. The king woke at dawn with frost on his beard. He ordered the gates unbarred, the bridge lowered, every torch extinguished. "If the true north means to show itself, let it survey a naked foe," he said. Maesters hissed about frostbite, brothers cursed. Yet they obeyed. The morning fog parted not by sun, but by movement. Columns of mist waddling aside for shapes half seen. Giants? No. Men, though unlike any tribe south of the Milkwater. They wore cuirasses of woven ice, seams stitched by sinew, helms crowned with antlers wrought of petrified bone. Their faces were dark, not the dusky olive of summer islanders, but obsidian, as though carved from onyx then polished by snowfall. Eyes luminescent blue without iris, like frozen lanterns. Each bore a staff carved with whorls that glimmered faintly. Behind them glided sledges dragged by gaunt reindeer, atop which lay long trunks draped in frost-sprinkled skins. Aegon descended alone to meet them at the ragged foot of the wall stairs. Beside him walked Maegor and Aenys, Stark, a sole maester, Ormyle by lot, and Jace Rivers of the Night's Watch, whose bastard blood ran usurped claims through half the north. No banners, no drawn steel. A king would stand unclad before prophecy once more. The leader of the Obsidian men halted 10 paces from Aegon. He lifted both hands, palms outward, and the staff he carried sprouted frost across the ground, writing a spiral glyph at his feet. Into that circle he stepped, planting the staff upright. When he spoke, his words cracked like thin ice under heel, yet carried across the air with unnatural clarity. "We are the last rememberers. The lattice broke, but the dream persists. The mountain fell, but her bones still sing. We come not as war, but as omen." Aegon answered in High Valyrian, for of all tongues it rang truest when hearts clenched. "Your omen cost blood dearer than crowns. Speak plainly." "And no." The rememberer nodded once. Somber. Plain is the wind, yet it scours mountains into dust. Plain is truth. Winter wakes. The shiver you feel in earth is breath returning to the dead piecemeal, the many who walk. They stir in the black beneath all living stones. Hungry for warmth they were denied. Giants were gatekeepers. They died. Now only we stand between unmaking and realm. He lifted the staff. The spiral of frost brightened until the glyph hovered, a spinning lattice of light. We keep memory, but memory bleeds. We need flame to scar shut the wound. "Then?" Maegor growled. "You come begging fire after slaying dragons?" "Giants slew dragons. We warned them they would not listen. Blood of frost is stubborn." The rememberer's gaze shifted, not to Maegor, but to the distant dark shape of Balerion chained upon the tower yard. "One flame remains. We ask its sacrifice, that all else may live." The words hit Aegon like a trebuchet stone, yet his face revealed nothing. Maegor's did. Rage, then calculation. Aenys stepped forward, voice raw. "Are you? We cannot. Valerian is the soul of this kingdom. Kingdoms end. Souls pass. World must kneel before cold or burn to cauterize it. The Rememberer tapped the staff, and the hovering glyph bloomed into images. Rivers freezing mid-fall, forests petrified in ice, villages entombed. The hallucinatory tableau ended in a whirlpool of shadows, shaped like men but hollow inside, walking through castle gates. The last thing Ennis saw was his own face iced over, mouth locked in a scream. The Rememberer lowered the staff. Silence cracked louder than drums. At last Lord Stark spoke, voice hoarse as wind. "What stands behind the lattice your giants broke?" The obsidian man touched his chest. "Our forefathers called it the gnawing. Maesters might name it entropy. It eats warmth, time, color, memory. It consumed the Dawn Age in the far north. Giants barred it with bone and breath. But bone decays. Breath falters. Only dragonfire may weld the bars anew." His cobalt eyes settled on the king. "Let your flame die for all flames." Maegor took one step, hand on sword. "No." The word rang iron. Aegon lifted a hand and his son froze. The king's gaze drifted up the yawning face of the wall behind him, to the sky beyond, to the faint shimmer of aurora mocking memory. In that moment the years sloughed from shoulders. He returned to the glacier's brink, hearing Visenya's last word burst like glass, seeing Rhaenys' smile rip through smoke. He remembered Balerian's shriek as tusks pierced lung, the gout of blood that steamed away before hitting snow. And he recalled something else, the cold that drank all sound, the hum in the earth, heartbeat of the gnawing perhaps, and how even victory tasted of ash. At length he said, "Fire is born to die consuming. I will not deny nature another cycle, but I will choose the manner of its ending." Ennis wept openly. Maegor's jaw clenched so hard his teeth cracked. Aegon ignored both, turning to the Rememberer. "Show me the gate. I will decide if Dragonfire may seal it." That dusk, they rode not on dragonback, but upon sledges drawn by shaggy bull elk, for Balerion could not yet fly the distances required. Instead, the black dread lumbered behind, wings binding the sky in tattered eclipse, kept aloft over deeper drifts by unnatural flurries that parted ahead of him. Proof of Rememberer sorcery. Aegon astride the lead sledge felt cold worm through armor seams, chewing the joints. The Rememberer sat beside him, eyes closed, staff laid across knees, humming a low anthem impossible to identify. Part lament, part lullaby, part invocation. Each stanza coaxed the wind into rising and folding, shaping a corridor through which the caravan pattered. They traveled 3 nights. The northern lights glimmered overhead, still frayed from the cataclysm decades past. Ennis twined his fingers through the air as though plucking those wisps into song. Behind him Maegor brooded, eyes fixed on the trudging dragon, measuring each labored breath. When Balerion faltered, Maegor dismounted to stride alongside, chanting encouragement like a smith beating rhythm upon an anvil. Aegon watched, and a fist of pride tightened in his chest. At dawn of the 4th day, they reached the mouth of a canyon split by black ice as smooth as obsidian. The Rememberer called it the Vein. That was all the translation allowed. Beyond its narrowing throat rose a structure not natural nor crafted. Ribs of ice arched into a cathedral vault, each adorned by lattice patterns half molten, half grown. Pulses of indigo flickered along veins buried within. The air stank of iron so pure it numbed tongues. Aegon sensed for the first time that fire might gutter here without breath, might suffocate like a torch plunged into snow. Balerion halted beneath the ribs, eyes pinched. Smoke seeped from nostrils but no flame. Aegon dismounted, crossing fissured ice toward a heart chamber, where the Rememberer signaled them to stop. A pit yawned there, circular, depthless, rim etched by spirals of frost and scorched stone. Heat bled inward, not outward. A match struck at the brink, extinguished itself before forming flame. The Rememberer knelt, driving his staff into the ground. Frost lines spread until they ringed the pit like claws. This is mouth of gnawing. In summers, it sleeps. In winter, it feeds. Your first conquest stirred appetite. The giant's fall cracked its lips. Soon, it will swallow. Bah! Aegon studied the abyss, recalling the void opened by Visenya's sword stroke. They felt of a peace, wounds in creation. He slipped Blackfire from its scabbard. The dark red blade steamed even in this killing chill. He cut into his palm and let blood drip. It hissed, turned to black threads that curled toward the pit, then fell, devoured mid-air. The king's face hardened. "Father," Aenys approached. "You do not need to." Maegor seized his brother's elbow. "Munro." He understood before words. The king turned to his sons, gaze flicking from bard to warhammer. One heart, born of two losses, may yet rule. He smiled then, a weary crescent. "My thrones are twin, as were the flames that forged them. Remember that." Without awaiting reply, he walked to Balerion. Stroked the scarred jaw. The dragon rumbled confusion, perhaps shame he could not breathe. Aegon climbed the foreleg. Swung into the saddle fashioned anew where bone had knitted. He whispered a command none heard. Balerion spread wings and lurched into a hover no higher than the rib vault. The effort drew a cry of agony. Gray fluid leaked from old wounds, instantly glazing into armor-sheen ice. Nevertheless, the beast circled twice, gathering bitter air into furnace sacks. A gout of black-blue fire plunged into the pit. The abyss devoured it soundlessly. Frost ribs flashed molten, then cooled. The pit flared brighter, a ring of indigo tongues licking at nothing. Again Balerion breathed. Again fire vanished. Yet each burst seeded sparks along the spiral glyphs etched by the Rememberer. Slowly they ignited, circulatory. Swirls of violet spread outward from the pit's rim, carving lines across the cathedral floor. Aegon shouted in Valyrian for one final breath. He stood in the stirrups, Blackfire raised. Balerion inhaled, deeper than lungs should permit. But instead of flame, the dragon exhaled blood. Superheated, gasified, a vapor red as wounded sunset. Aegon, poised at the apex of saddle, swan dove from the dragon's neck straight into that venting cloud. His armor ignited. He became spear of living flame. Body and sword together plunged into the pit. A sound like the shattering of every bell in Westeros erupted. The ground jolted. Ribs buckled inward. From the pit rose a tower-wide pillar of fire so dark, it seemed void-black, rimmed in crimson. It slammed the ceiling, blew outward, engulfing the rib vault in a corona. Maegor dragged Aenys behind Balerion's massive thorax, heat still blistered cheeks. The Rememberer stood unmoving as flames leapt around him. Glyphs flared white, then winked out as if sucked inward. The pulsing indigo veins along the cathedral walls guttered and died. Silence followed, broken only by Balerion's labored huff, and the distant groan of shifting ice. When smoke waned, the pit was gone. In its place spread a seal of obsidian fused with crimson glass, smooth as mirror. At its center lay Blackfire, half embedded, still glowing. Of Aegon remained no trace, not ash, not bone. Only the sword and a single cracked scale melted into the glass. Maegor knelt first, head bowed so low his uncut hair swept the glass. Aenys joined, tears steaming off cheeks. The Rememberer strode forward and tapped staff upon the seal once. A chiming tone rang outward, steady as a heartbeat, alive with restrained warmth. He turned to the Targaryen princes. Flame bound to flesh seal's gate. Dragon's breath alone could not. King gave breath, and blood, and soul. Gnawing sleeps again. Benderu. Maegor's eyes burned scarlet. And when it wakes? The Rememberer leaned on his staff, weariness now etched into the obsidian face. Then another soul of fire must decide again. They spoke little on the return journey. Balerion trudged behind, eyes restless. Maegor rode near the dragon always, whispering vows. Aenys sketched on parchment maps of the cathedral and seal, verses half-formed, laments, anthems, warnings. The Rememberers escorted them to the wall, then vanished with the northern lights, leaving no tracks. Word traveled south faster than ravens. The conqueror was gone, swallowed by duty to a nightmare beyond myth. Court erupted. Some lords hailed Maegor at once, hearts eager for iron. Others whispered that Aenys, gentle and born first, must carry the crown. The realm teetered on fratricide's brink. But when the princes returned astride Balerion, Maegor in the saddle, Aenys clinging behind, they entered the dragon pit courtyard side by side. Before assembled lords they knelt together and placed hands upon the black dread's skull. Maegor's deep voice thundered, "We are twin scales of one purpose, flame and memory. I wield the sword, my brother the song. Together we honor our father's fire." Aenys followed, voice trembling yet clear. "And should the gnawing rouse again, we two stand sentinel. One to bear the blade, one to bear the tale, that our children might choose their own sacrifice rather than inherit silence." Lords looked to Princess Alyssa then, for power must triangulate. She stepped forward, donned gloves, char black up to elbow, stained by wildfire tests, and spoke in crisp tone, "I forge the future from embers. Bring me shattered swords and broken oaths. I will melt and recast them until they ring true." Sparks winked from her fingertips, dancing green before fading. Thus the conqueror's legacy cleft to three: Maegor Warhammer, Aenys Heartsinger, Alyssa Embersmith. Balerion, last dragon of might, spread faltering wings above them, exhaling a plume half fire, half smoke that drifted skyward like a benediction. In years to come they quarreled, doubted, loved, and hated, as kin wrought in bright metals will, yet none forgot the smell of frost-eating flame or the shape of a father's armor burning against an endless dark. They poured dragon's gold into a new citadel atop Dragonstone, where obsidian artisans etched the story into walls with gemstones for eyes. Here giants sang frost, here queens fell like stars, here a king threw himself into an unmaking, so the realm might waken to spring again. And sometimes, on cloudless winter nights, the aurora revived in faint cerise bands, twisting above the narrow sea. On those nights, Balerion limped to the highest courtyard, rumbling a mournful song. Maegor sat beside, helm set aside, gazing north until dawn painted the ramparts rose. Aenys perched above the castle gate, harp in hand, plucking the conqueror's requiem, a melody so soft sentries mistook it for wind among merlins. Alyssa in her forge reshaped wildfire glass into hollow globes, capturing in each a single wobbling beam of aurora. She kept them in a velvet box, gifts for children yet unborn. For the realm learned that memory, like ice, cracks unless seared by witness. They learned too what Aegon spoke with dying flame: "We are but a breath between giants, and beyond giants waits the cold." The hush before dawn held Dragonstone in a breathless pall, seeping through cracks in volcanic rock and along the new citadel's gallery of obsidian frescoes. Maegor stood at a window framed by wing-like buttresses and watched Balerion limp across the courtyard far below, dark mass blotting starlight in slow, deliberate arcs. The dragon's ribs showed like bridge girders beneath sagging hide. Each exhale puffed sparks that died before leaving nostrils. Storm clouds bruised the eastern horizon, yet the light rising behind them possessed a molten amber haze Maegor recognized as the old warmth of his father's voice. In the reflection on the glass he saw his own helm tucked beneath an arm and almost laughed. War gear at dawn, but for whose battle? No banners menaced the narrow sea, no free city galleys cut foam toward Blackwater Bay. The war now pressed against ribs and skull instead, a siege laid by grief that would not lift. Behind him, boots clicked. Aenys entered, cloak dragging ash from forge braziers. Alyssa had left banked high through the night. The elder brother's fingers bore callous grooves where harp strings used to cut, though he had not dared string a new harp since Aegon burned. His voice arrived soft but steady, a summer drizzle finding cracks in ramparts. The Pentoshi envoy waits in the lower hall. 30 crates of spice and silk. They beg audience with the triune crown on terms most generous. Thou. Maegor snorted. They want toll remission on Tyrosh wine. He tapped knuckles on the glass, watching Balerian's bulk shrink as the dragon shuddered onto a ledge and folded battered wings. Let them wait until the sun clears that storm, then grant half their request and send them home seasick. Silence swelled. Aenys' gaze traveled to the courtyard. The maester says Balerian's coughing black water. The wound in his lung never closed. Dum? It closed enough to outfly every arrow fired in 3 kingdoms. That was months ago. Does time blunt dragon fire? Maegor's question tasted of smoke. He turned, expecting a flinch. Aenys only sighed, the weary sound of parchment settling flat beneath a rock. When fire dims, Aenys said, we add oil or find new tinder. All things must feed or fade. He stepped nearer, and the gap between brothers shrank to a sword's breadth. Alyssa has been lighting braziers with jars she calls dawn glass. Dust of wildfire mixed with sand gathered from the red shores. One spark, and it burns neither hot nor cold. But, like the seal father, forged with his life, she thinks she can coax that brightness into living scales. Medimerwanda. Maegor's brow furrowed. Alchemy breeds ghosts, not hatchlings. And we have ghosts aplenty. Ghosts, and a kingdom waiting on more than fear. Aenys' hand rose, half offering, half plea. Come downstairs. Sit the envoy. Show the realm its beating heart. Still throbs under steel. Bender roll. Maegor's fingers tightened on the helm, black steel veined with crimson, until leather creaked. Then, abrupt as a drawbridge fall, he set it upon his head. Tell them we descend together. They strode the serpentine stairs shoulder to shoulder. Halfway they passed the forge vault. Alyssa knelt inside amid banks of glass globes suspended by iron hooks. Stars caught at dusk, each orb swirling cerise and jade light. Her robe hugged slender arms dusted with green soot. Goggles rode her brow, leaving pale crescents above smoke-caked cheeks. She did not glance up, lost 2 equations scrawled on a slate. But the glow flared when both brothers crossed the threshold, as if the globe sensed the pulse of bloodline and quickened. Maegor paused, transfixed. The nearest orb beat with color, light strobing faster than a swallow's heart. Threads within braided into lattices that flickered between pale northern blue and dragonfire red. Alyssa muttered to the slate, fractured figures wrestling for dominion. Ailey, Aenys called gently. The Pentoshi. Let them simmer. She replied without lifting her head. Dawn glass is temperamental, and the phases align only with equinox tides. Interruptions corrupt the weave. Maegor stepped over crucibles to crouch by her. That globe. Why does it mirror the lattice that killed our mothers? Her eyes flicked up, green slits glowing with reflected fire. Because every lock yearns for its key. The old lattice bound dragons with frost. I bend the formula. Feed it ember pulse so the weave knits heat and cold in harmony. Imagine armor that drinks freezing spells and births flame. Men? Another weapon. A shield first. She corrected, pushing a copper stylus through her braid. The rememberers warn that when the gnawing wakes again, it will swallow sorcery as easily as breath. Only balanced energies, opposite and equal, can survive its hunger. Aenys folded arms. Then why not cloak the realm in song? Words endure even after empire's ash. Because words are eaten last, not never. I intend never. Her certainty rang like a smith's hammer. Maegor's gaze fell upon a dark egg nested in pumice near the furnace throat, scaled with ash-white motes. Small as a hawk's. And this? Alyssa covered it with tongs, slipping it deeper into shadow. A thought-given shape? He let the question die, sensing lines she would not cross. Do not starve yourself for genius, sister. I feed on wonder. She said. Send the Pentoshi home with tales of it. Down in the audience hall, the envoy bowed beneath dragon skulls and offered velvet chests of saffron and gull-winged silk, stamped with the red sun of Mir. Maegor allowed the man to sweat through rehearsed compliments before granting a terse reduction in duties. Aenys smoothed the edges with lyric promises of future markets. When the envoy departed, Maegor caught a glint in his brother's eye. Relief mingled with dread, like a deer that learned the wolf watches, but does not presently hunger. That night, the brothers climbed to the rookery where wind beat slate roofs like muffled drums. Ravens carried fewer messages these days. The realm's ear bent not to parchment but rumor blown in taverns. Maegor, the iron hand; Aenys, the faint-hearted; Alyssa, the witch-bride. Aenys loosened a parchment roll and extended it under a lamp. From Winterfell. The Woodroad villages report cattle found flash-frozen, eyes sheared by crystal shards. Stark asks whether the seal's heartbeat weakened. Maegor frowned. The rememberers said the gnawing sleeps for generations. Dreams grow restless when memory prods, Aenys murmured. Stories of fathers' offerings spread on northern winds. Perhaps grief itself cracks the seal. Mem? At that moment, a raven shrieked overhead, wings thrashing. Feather dust whirled in frantic cyclone, and abruptly ignited with green flame. The bird plunged, screeched, then erupted into ash before touching stone. Lamplight turned sickly. The brothers spun toward the stair as a figure climbed from blackness. Alyssa, cloak smoldering at the hem, eyes wild. She thrust 2 spheres of dawn glass into Maegor's hands. They burned cool, the chill of deep water stiff in his gloves. The seal falters, she gasped. My lattice feels resonance, like a bone flute humming to distant thunder. If it shatters, every northern hearth may freeze in an hour. Maegor's jaw set. Then we ride. We limp, Aenys corrected, voice hoarse. Balerion is days from collapse. Then we bleed. Maegor took 1 sphere, slipping it into a chain mesh pouch at his belt. Forge a cradle on his breast with these globes. Alchemists, saddle-wrights, wake them all. By dawn I want a shell of dawn glass anchoring his heart. We carry the balanced fire north. Alyssa bit her lip, but nodded. The globes fracture if jarred. The ride must be gentle. Nanda so. Maegor almost laughed despite the peril. Tell the world's last dragon to glide like a swan. 2 days raged by. Blacksmiths hammered dawn glass shards into a carapace that nestled Balerion's chest wound. Ribbons of Valyrian steel threaded the joints, each etching humming with Aenys sung incantations. Syllables braided from High Valyrian, and the rememberers cracked ice tongue. As craftsmen toiled, courtiers gathered on terraces, watching the sun halo the dragon in green and violet glows. Some knelt. Some fled. Word flew. The black dread would beat once more, carrying within his breast the very dawn. The night before departure, Maegor wandered the silent courtyard. Balerion lay still, eye reflecting firepots. The prince leaned close and spoke of childhood memories, a father's steady hand upon reins, a mother, Visinia, showing him how to oil dark sister's edge, Rhaenys teaching him to whistle so hawks would stoop in delight. He confessed fear, of failure, of losing Aenys, of finding no battlefield worthy of this looming sacrifice. The dragon's great lid blinked once. Slow. In that reptilian regard, Maegor thought he saw understanding, or resignation, or maybe nothing but the mirror of his own longing. At dawn they soared. Balerion's first wing beat cracked battlements. The second carved a trough through ocean fog. By the 10th they glided, hush of ancient leather billowing like funeral shrouds. Maegor rode forward with Alyssa tied behind, her arms clasping the dawn glass cradle to ensure no jar. Aenys rode aft, voice weaving a constant hymn, notes slipping past wind to seep into steel laces around the carapace. With each league north, the hymn deepened. Chill waves lapped the melody, turning it mournful. Upon reaching the wall, they found the Night's Watch, mustered on frost-bright ramparts, torches flickering uselessly against an aurora boiling overhead. The colors differed now. Streaks of hungry black threading through violet, filaments of void that seemed to swallow starlight. Brothers shouted warnings. Scouting parties lost beyond the frost fangs. Snow that rang like bells underfoot. Eyes watching from fissures. Maegor dismounted long enough to clasp forearms with Lord Commander Jace Rivers. "Hold until we return or dawn kills warmth." The commander grinned bleakly. "I will hold until songs unlearn their words, my prince. Go." Balerion rose once more, angling for the Vein Canyon. At its threshold, ice ribs shimmered malice. And there, coiled around the sealed pit like ivy of night, writhed cracks, black lines spitting vapor so cold Maegor's vision fractured. The seal's obsidian mirror pulsed red at the embedded black fire. Cracks spidered out, feasting on heat. Shapes moved. Rememberers knelt chanting, staves planted, frost webs spinning from palms. But for every thread they wove, fissures multiplied. On ledges above the canyon, silhouettes paced on skeletal limbs, figures neither giant nor man, woven of ice dust and embers of old grief. Eye sockets gaped empty yet glimmered within, as though farlights flickered behind deep water. The gnawing's first avatars. The dragon screamed challenge. Maegor stood in saddle, raising his father's sword high, borrowed from the seal for this desperate charge. Blackfire sang blood-red light along glyphs Aegon, etched with ash of self-immolation. Aenys Hin's sword, harmonizing with blade resonance. The dawn-glass cradle vibrated against Alyssa's spine, threads of heat and cold braiding, until the globe's core shone star-white. Balerion descended. A gulf opened below, an inhalation of abyss. The avatar shrieked. Soundless, yet Maegor felt earbones tremble. Spears of condensed night hurled upward, punching holes in the dragon's tattered wings. Smoke jetted from wounds, but dawn glass counterflared, weaving a mesh of shimmering ribbon behind each tear to keep air aloft. They struck the seal. Balerion planted claws around the embedded sword and coughed flame. Surging red, yes, but laced now with glimmering white frost fire coaxed from dawn glass. It poured into fissures. Cracks howled, recoiling like worms salted. The avatars convulsed, forms unraveling as bonds of contrast tore them. Cold against cold, found no purchase, but cold against living fire, they shattered. Alyssa leapt from saddle, landing on the mirror, and driving iron spikes to anchor lattice orbs at compass points. Each orb she pierced with a black needle of dragon glass. Aenys dropped behind, voice cresting to battle roar. Words of fire crashed upon words of frost. From their collision birthed harmonics that knitted cracks shut as fast as they spawned. The gnawing answered. The pit's core glowed, iris of infinite night widening. A column of void speared upward, punching through Balerion's chest. The dragon shuddered. The cradle flashed. Dawn glass met pure nothingness, and held. For a blink, 2, 3, Joel waned. But the cradle seems crazed white. Maegor looked into Aenys's eyes across the maelstrom. Understanding passed noiselessly. Without severing the hymn, Aenys shifted key, funneling melody into Maegor's veins, fortifying sinew with song. Maegor drew breath that tasted of molten copper, and raised Blackfire high. He stepped from saddle, strides molten by dawn glass aura, and plunged the sword deeper into the pit. The blade sank until hilt kissed mirrored glass. Maegor felt bone crackle. Heat seared marrow. The void column recoiled as if scalded. Aenys Hin's sword. Alyssa's orbs detonated into rings of balanced flame. For heartbeat on heartbeat, the gnawing shrieked through every rock. The air loomed, as if the sky were a drumhead struck by gods. Then, stillness. The mirror cooled to crimson embers, fissures sealed. Avatars dissolved to drifting snow. Balerion collapsed across the chamber, chest wound smoking yet closed. Maegor knelt beside him, fingers raking smoke from nostrils. A pulse answered. Weak, but living. Alyssa approached, hair white where frostfire had kissed it. The cradle is spent. She whispered, but the lattice holds, fused anew with Blackfire's core. It will outlast our memories. Bah! Aenys stumbled forward, voice husked to silence. He gripped Maegor's wrist. "Once more, brother. Conquer the dark." Maegor grinned, teeth bloody. "We will guard it instead." They rested in the vein until dawn bled rose across glacier peaks. No rememberer remained. Their staves lay abandoned, humming softly. Alyssa gathered the hum into crystal vials. Aenys sank upon a fallen rib and plucked a ghost harp string coaxed from wind. Maegor stood watch, hand upon Blackfire now fused to seal, swearing oath that if the gnawing yawned again, he would feed it only emptiness. When they returned to the wall, brothers black-cloaked saluted with foreheads to ice. Across half a realm ravens told the tale. Maegor the shield, Aenys the voice, Alyssa the flame-crafter. And somewhere deep in catacombs of King's Landing, among bones of foreign conquerors and shattered giants, a single egg of mottled ash began to tremble with a heartbeat, matching 3 young rulers whose wills had folded frost and fire into something new. Something the gnawing, in all its hungers, had never tasted and perhaps could never swallow. Resolve tempered by sacrifice and bound by love thicker than dragon blood. Thicker than dragon blood. Long after torch smoke cleared, beneath a sky rinsed clean, Balerion dozed on warm stone. Breeze sifted scales that would never truly knit, yet through every breath rolled a faint glow, the last spark of dawn glass pulsing like a second heart. The dragon slept, and in his dream he flew over fields of ember snow, where 2 queens laughed in silver and bronze, and a king made of shadows kept pace, ever turning his gaze westward, where giants once knelt, and the world learned the price of letting grief turn cold. Somewhere in that dream the black dread roared, not in pain but declaration. Fire remembers, ice forgives nothing, yet when they meet in equal measure they birth a morning neither could foresee. Oh, ka, yao. Smoke coiled lazily above Dragonstone's eastern vent, wreathing the jagged caldera in veils of ember-red dusk. Across the courtyard, watchfires guttered beneath winds, laden with the sea's brine, casting rippling shadows over 2 familiar silhouettes, Maegor Warhammer and Aenys Heartsinger, who stood shoulder to shoulder upon the basalt parapet. It had been 2 years since they had returned from the vein, but the memory of the gnawing's howl still haunted every corner of the citadel, in the silent dread of servants lighting torches at twilight, in the creak of iron-bound doors that shut a fraction faster than before, and, most of all, in the languid fragile breaths of the world's last great dragon. Balerion lay coiled at the courtyard center beneath a makeshift iron canopy to shield him from rain. Even in repose the black dread's bulk dwarfed siege towers, yet the mighty chest now rose in shallow pulses rather than thunderous roars. His dawn-glass carapace, woven by Alyssa's alchemists and fused with Maegor's hammer blows, still shimmered through ragged gaps in ashen hide, but its once vibrant lattice of violet and frostfire had dimmed to a ghostly pallor. "His heart flame falters," Aenys murmured, grasping the parapet's gnarled edge. The wind whipped his copper-gold hair against his cheek, a half-tethered banner of hope and grief. Every word he spoke rasped. The years had never returned the full strength of his voice, not since he poured half his soul into the song that sealed the gnawing. "I hear it in my dreams, Maegor. The rhythm slips like a harp string too thin to hold true pitch." Maegor rested a gauntleted hand on his brother's shoulder. Under moonlight, his own reflection shimmered in the smoke. The iron helm flared with black scale ridges, the wide shoulders bound in pauldrons, quarried from Dragonstone's volcanic glass. "Balerion's breath bought every soul in the realm another dawn," he answered, voice deep as tide caves. "He has earned his rest. When his fires cool at last, let them cool in peace. But when his fire dies, what flame is left to keep the gate shut?" Aenys' eyes shone with the first pinch of desperation. He turned toward the vast bay, where scattered fishing boats bobbed like fireflies upon an ink-green mirror. Stark ravens speak of empty nights. No hoofprints in the snow, no frost-bitten cattle, no sign of the gnawing's avatars. Yet, rock salt freezes on cliff walls and cracks to dust at dawn, as though something sucks the breath from the very stone. Endero. Maegor gazed northward across the dark water. His thoughts trailed along an invisible path, past King's Landing's riotous cobbles, past the Windwater, up the White Knife, and between the frost fangs. searching for the sealed pit under the vein. He could almost smell the cold void again, and taste iron in the air. "The gate holds," he said, quieter. "Black fire is wedged in its heart. Father would not let the world crumble so soon." "It isn't Father I fear," Aenys whispered. "It's memory. Memory has teeth more patient than wolves. It gnaws from the inside." Somewhere above them, a bell tolled, one deep peal. Footfalls scuffed behind. The brothers turned to see Sir Tregor of the Flame Guard approaching in crimson lacquered plates. The old knight's cheeks glistened with sweat, despite the night chill. "Hairs of Dragonstone," he panted. "The alchemists beg your presence in the vault. It seems the ash egg has split." Maegor's heart jarred. He turned to Aenys. Wonder mirrored on both faces. Without a word they strode down the stairwell, their capes rippling as they plunged into the torch-lit depths. Alyssa Ember Smith, queen in all but crown, knelt beside a pedestal of obsidian carved with the triple-headed dragon sigil. Melting candle wax pooled across the floor, reflecting eerie green swirls of wildfire glass. Before her lay the egg, cracked wide along a seam that glowed from within with swirling hues of dawn glass. Violet, chartreuse, pale aqua, and blood red. Tiny rivulets of steam coiled between fractures, carrying the distant scent of salt and storm clouds. When the brothers entered, she flicked her gaze up. Dark sunken circles ringed the green of her eyes, and strands of once chestnut hair had turned silver-white near the temples. The cost of binding opposed elements day after day at her crucibles. 23 months of coaxing hollows. "Pinwadiams," she said, breathless. Calcined basalt, powdered dragonglass, crushed seed pearl, wildling frost moss. The black sand of Valeria. No prayers, no pyres, only balanced resonance under the equinox tide. Tonight, the heart line split. Bendero. Light pulsed again. Stronger, and the fissure widened to reveal a membrane thin as tears. Inside something shifted, sluggish, lantern-lit, as though a starfish glimmered in tide pool shallows. The brothers drew nearer, but Alyssa lifted a hand. "It must finish its own emergence. If dawn glass is true beyond theory, this creature will not be pure fire but equilibrium incarnate." "A dragon solely of balance," Aenys breathed. "Could such a beast even live? Or live long enough," Maegor added, "to carry our flame north when Balerion falls?" The egg rocked twice. A flake of shell popped free and evaporated mid-air. From inside protruded a snout like black tourmaline veined with rimy blue. Eyes opened, irises the color of molten steel, and studied the flickering chamber with utter stillness. Its scales held no uniform hue. They shifted from midnight purple near the crown to pearlescent frost along the throat, as if two dragons' hides overlapped in mosaic shards. The hatchling uncoiled, snapping wet wings once. Instead of flat, membranous sails, its wings resembled fused fans overlaying translucent quartz, each strut glowing with veins of pale flame. It stretched, mewed quietly, and looked up at Alyssa. She extended two gloved fingers. The hatchling nudged her palm with a nose still soft, steam pluming gently from nostrils. Its breath felt neither warm nor cold, but some impossible middle ground, tinkling against skin. A shiver of awe ran through every observer. In a voice barely louder than a prayer, Alyssa said, "Welcome, little fulcrum." At once the hatchling's gaze fixed on her, head tilting with eerie focus. Aenys dared a chuckle, cracked though it was. "Fulcrum isn't a name to sing," he rasped. "Give her a songful blessing." Equinox," Maegor offered, his shadow looming across the pedestal. "The turning point of daylight and dark. Let it be so." Alyssa placed her palm flat. The hatchling stepped upon it with talons no larger than a child's quill knife. "And may balance find us worthy." News of Equinox birth spread through courts like wildfire on a dry wind. Crowns and city councils alike dispatched envoys hoping for glimpses of the living wonder. Some with gifts, some with daggers hidden in fruit baskets. The Mirish offered telescopes of dragon bone brass, the summer islanders' rare spices to ensure the hatchling tasted no blandness. From Old Town arrived an archmaester, bearing a ring of crystalline glass forged in hidden workshops, promising to chart the babe's growth by color refraction. But Alyssa kept observers at arm's length. Only Maegor and Aenys held the hatchling without gloves, for a bond of sibling trust demanded no less. Even Balerion raised one battered eye as the hatchling perched on his snout. A thin tremble shuddered through the old dragon, part grief, part wonder. Yet wonder alone could not still the drum of war slowly building beneath the realm's veneer of peace. For though the gnawing slept, mortal hearts stirred new discord. The triune rulership, twin princes crowned in action but not in ceremony, and a sister wielding alchemy rather than sept-sanctioned authority, chafed the feudal structure stretched beneath them. Many lords, anxious to sit before a single monarch, secretly proposed fracturing the realm again. Give the soft-spoken bard the capital, and send the Iron Prince to Storm's End. Let the witch-bright woman bury herself in Dragonstone smoke. Plots ripened in whispered corners. Some reached Dragonstone upon unintended lips, smuggled by frightened servants eager to spare kin from Maegor's rumored temper. The Iron Prince listened, eyes sharp as wrought flint, and said little. Aenys listened too, heart aching. But still he donned the small council robes and answered petitions in the Red Keep's throne room each moonrise, voice unwavering even when his gaze drifted north. Only Alyssa seemed immune to such coils. She nested Equinox in a steel aviary, feeding charfish and powdered ruby, measuring wing beats and spectrum shifts. She discovered the creature's flame burned in 2 stages. First, a plume of silvery vapor that flash-froze air, then a core beam of red-gold heat that carved runic scars through ice left behind. And she learned that after each breath, Equinox's chest glowed with a faint pulse, identical to that beneath Balerion's dawn-glass heart. One dawn, she requested audience with her brothers in the new observatory built atop Dragonstone's highest spur. Maegor arrived from the training yards, hammer slick with sweat. Aenys from the receiving hall, scrolls under arm. Equinox perched on a brachial stand, forged of sky steel, preening iridescent scales under amber light. Moonset still bled across the water, reflecting glimmers of sunrise. Alyssa rolled out a wide parchment strung with layers of sigils, arcsays, and notes. This is the lattice pulse, she began. Blue lines traced the gnawing's gate. Red rains marked blackfires fused in bed. She pointed to a series of spiking glyphs across the page's edge. Last equinox. The heartbeat spiked long after we left the vein. Not weakening, intensifying. And every sliver of dawn glass forged since trembles in sympathy. Then? Aenys frowned. What does that mean? Either the gate feeds upon dawn glass, she explained, or dawn glass feeds from the gate. A closed wound may scab, but a scab may itch until it bleeds anew. Maegor rested both hands on the table's rim, leaning over the drawing like a blacksmith appraising flawed steel. Can equilibrium hold if one side devours the other? Only if the fulcrum tips, Alyssa replied. She glanced toward Equinox. The hatchling's flame is both chill and heat. If its breath infuses the reagent glass in situ, perhaps it resets the symmetry. To retemper the seal, Aenys murmured, awe-coating every syllable. Another sacrifice. No, she said. This time, a graft. A living tether. The brothers exchanged a look. Maegor straightened. How long before Equinox can fly the Frostfangs? In weight, a year, Alyssa answered. In will, perhaps weeks. She learns quickly. At the word she, the hatchling chirped and beat crystalline wings, sending refracted patterns dancing across the chamber walls. Maegor's gaze softened, but steel returned quickly. He nodded once. I will ride ahead when she is ready, break any host that bars passage. Aenys will craft songs of vow to reinforce the knit. Alyssa started to speak, but a tremor rattled the floor. In the courtyard below, Balerion's body spasmed, jaws slack. A geyser of black smoke burst skyward, then collapsed inward. Servants screamed. The three siblings bolted down the stairs. Before they reached the base, a thunderclap rocked the keep, the dragon's tail convulsing with seismic force. Maegor reached the courtyard first, hammer raised. Balerian's eyes, dim for months, blazed catastrophic orange. The dawn-glass cradle glowed white fire, trails of luminous script racing across fractured plates. Then came the terrible sound, a single exhale so deep it stole air from lungs 50 paces distant. A cone of darkness, edged with crackling frost, shot upward and struck the ward's ceiling. Ice crystallized instantly along beams. Where flame should roar, only void gaped, swirling. Alyssa staggered to a halt, aghast. Its bleeding equilibrium, too much at once. Balerian's chest deflated further. Another breath, this one weak, as though something within clawed free. The cradle plates split. A fragment of glass shot off, ricocheting to embed in a stone pillar. Steam hissed from cracks, and Maegor sensed a change in resonance. The air hummed with the same pitch he had felt at the gate. "Clear the yard," he roared. Guards herded pages away. Aenys knelt near the dragon's jowls, tears streaking soot on cheeks. "Steady, old friend," he rasped, voice breaking. Balerian's eye slid toward him, pupil shrinking to a pin's width. The fire there was agony incarnate, but also longing. Then, stillness. The eye clouded. Chest fell a final inch. A hush thicker than prayer smothered the courtyard. Aenys bowed his head. Alyssa's gloved hand covered her mouth. Maegor stood immobile, one gauntlet resting on a massive scale. The dawn-glass cradle dimmed, all color seeping away until only lines of dull gray netting remained. "Father's sentinel," Maegor whispered, "is gone." Even the breeze hushed, as if the island's volcano inhaled grief. The funeral pyre rose 200 feet upon a natural escarpment at Dragonstone's southern tip, built of cedar, ironwood, and stacked slabs of black basalt shaped into dragon talons. All of King's Landing could see the plume when Maegor ignited the structure using Equinox's first balanced flame. Silvery white vapor crystallized in the air, then burst into hollow sparks of ruby heat. The old dragon's carcass caught with majestic finality, blue and crimson embers swirling into a tempest that reddened the clouds. For hours, the tower-high pillar of ash painted shadows over the sea. Ships anchored miles offshore lowered sails and tolling bells echoed faint but mournful. In the glow, Maegor knelt before Blackfire, now reforged from the seal's edge by Alyssa's new technique, serrated with frost glass down its center. As flames licked the horizon, he pressed the sword's point to the volcanic ground and spoke. "Let the realm remember Aegon, Rhaenys, Visenya, and Balerion together in one breath. They closed the world's wound twice. In their names we will close it forever." Aenys stepped forward, harp tucked to his ribs. Though his lungs burned at every note, he sang a dirge of two tongues, one of snow, one of flame. Visitors wept openly at the melody, for the song seemed to carry embers in each syllable, melting sorrow into bitter resolve. When the last chord faded, the pyre's top collapsed, sending an enormous plume spiraling skyward. Out of that vortex soared Equinox, tiny against the roar but radiant. Her wings beat once, twice, until she floated in a crown of sparks that haloed the new moon. A hush of reverence swelled across the cliffs. Then she screamed, an eerie, beautiful cry equal parts hunting hawk and dying star. The cry ended on a high flurry that trembled in every chest, promise and warning. Hearts seldom remain cowed. Within weeks of Balerion's passing, rumors crawled again, faster, now that one dragon remained too young to ride. The faith militant petitioned to examine Equinox, claiming concerns of unnatural craft. The Iron Islands whispered of reavers testing undefended shores. At Storm's End, Lord Baratheon's seneschal reported sellswards massing in the stepstones, flown under banners devoid of heraldry, ghost flags, rumored financed by Brevosi wrens. And north of the Neck, Stark scouts vanished along the lakes called tear mirrors, where reflections lingered seconds after faces turned away. Maegor responded first with steel. He drilled fresh levees beneath Dragonstone's shadow, forging shock units called the Ember Guard. Men and women clad in churned dawn glass lamellar, edges so sharp they sliced frostweb spells on contact. They learned to fight as triplets. One shield-bearer, one glaive-axe, one flamecaster, trained by Alyssa to sling glass globes filled with Equinox spent breath. Splashed upon shields, the vapor hardened into rime crust. An axe strike would detonate frost to fire, a single blow wielding both elements in concert. Aenys marshaled a quieter defense. He sent ravens to every sept and holdfast, teaching maesters a new hymn key to dawn glass resonance. It began as a lullaby, slow and minor. Sung within halls lined by lattice sigils, it calmed sparks of cold tunneling through stone, delaying the freeze that preceded Avatar emergence. Wherever the hymn traveled, villagers painted braided circles above doors, fire red entwined with frost blue. The common folk called it the turned coin, because on its side one face mirrored the other. Soon turned coin charms hung in every cottage from Dorne to White Harbor, a patient bulwark of music and belief. Still, the true test churned far from mortal gullies. At the vein, beneath ribs of ice blacker now than night, the seal quaked. Black fire pulsed inside glass like a heart straining in chest too small. Each thrum sent whispers through the world, tickling every shard of dawn glass, every song line and memory scar. Somewhere in deep winter, rememberers stirred, survivors of Maegor's last visit, gathering around half-dead staves, wondering if balance could hold. Late winter's breath scraped King's Landing raw. The night, the high-born conspiracy broke. Within the Red Keep's tapestry hall, Lord Belric Thorne led 5 lords and a silent sister of the faith in an unsanctioned conclave. A single brazier glowed. Around it, they spun a web of alternate futures, dethroning the iron brute for a single, pliable monarch, binding Aenys to the High Septon by vow, marrying Alyssa off to a Lysine prince to remove her siphoning influence. None planned explicit murder, yet, but tongues strayed too close to treason. They failed to note the extra panel in the tapestry, a false wall behind which a young emberguard called Lysera Rivers crouched, ordered by Maegor to sniff alliances after a suspicious flow of Pentoshi silver through the capital. She counted names, watched lips. At dawn she carried the list by secret ship to Dragonstone. Maegor's fury erupted not as flames but as ice. He did not storm into council. He drafted letters. Each bore the imprint of Equinox's talon dipped in mirror ink, silver against black. He invited the lords to Dragonstone for solemn reconciliation. To everyone's astonishment they came. Not fear but calculation guided them. Better to test the iron beast in his lair, then spring the High Septon's ultimatum. The day of audience arrived under slate skies. Inside the throne nave, where obsidian pillars carved into entwined dragons supported a dome of stained glass, Maegor sat on a throne of fused dawn glass shards. Light slicing through the dome, fractured across his armor in pulses of violet frost heat. Aenys stood at his right, harp silent but presence steady. Alyssa at his left, Equinox perched on her arm like a living flame lantern. Lord Thorne stepped forth, robes of sea green lined with lynx fur. He bowed with rehearsed deference. Prince Maegor. King Maegor corrected, voice low thunder. By sword and song we shield the realm. Thorne's smile froze. He glanced at the High Septon's sister beside him. She raised a small scroll bearing the 7-pointed star. Your Grace. The Council of the Faith summons you to stand judgment for heresies. Recite them, Maegor ordered. Her voice trembled as she read. Witchcraft beyond the Lord's light. Creation of abominations neither fire nor flesh. Binding of living souls to sorcerous alloys. Claiming sovereignty without coronation. Before echoes died, Maegor rose, descending 2 steps. He unslung Blackfire, blade humming. Equinox hissed softly, wings unfurling to halo Alyssa in spectral color. But Aenys raised a calming hand, palm sore where harpstrings once kissed. He addressed the assembly with soft but unyielding tone. You charge us with balancing what no man dared. Our mother Vicinia cut the night itself to avenge her sister. Our father burned his life for all breathing things. We do no less. We weave frost and fire so our children inherit more than dust. If that is heresy, then sin be crowned saint. Poetry, Thorn scoffed. Words cannot feed small folk when fields fail because winter lingers. Your meddling cracks seasons. Seasons crack by nature, Alyssa replied, voice like tempered glass. She lifted Equinox. The hatchling's throat glowed with rolling storm fire. A hush slid through the nave. Alyssa continued, only balance holds the hinge. Stand aside or stand consumed. Thorn's sneer curled into fear, but he stepped forward, desperate. We stand with crown shaped by septi and sword. Choose. Crown the proper king by the faith's blessing, or we withdraw tithes levies. That word died as Maegor's hammer crashed onto marble, splitting stone in a shockwave that threw lords to knees. He pointed Blackfire's tip at Thorn's chest. Withdraw anything, and the realm recalls who forged its first unification. My armies will not split the world again. Yours would splinter under them. Yet I offer mercy. Kneel pledged to the turned coin, fire and frost, and we move onward as one. Silence sucked the hall's breath. Finally, the youngest of the lords, a maiden Lady Juliana Rowan, stepped forward. She knelt, drawing a ribbon of red and blue silk from her sleeve and binding it around her wrist. I pledge to balance, she declared. Several others followed, including the silent sister, throwing herself prostrate until her veil kissed glass dust. Thorn alone remained standing, jaw tight. Aenys turned gentle eyes upon him. Friend, there is space at our hearth, he said. Let fear thaw. Kneel. Lord Thorn looked to each sibling. His gaze lingered on Equinox last. He swallowed, then lowered himself, knees clicking against cracked stone. Maegor sheathed Blackfire and extended a hand. Thorn grasped it. No more words required. That night, banners of fire and frost unfurled from Dragonstone spires. A split sigil, one head of the Targaryen dragon wrought in scarlet flame, the other in icy blue, throats knotted around an iron coin. Messengers galloped to every holdfast, carrying the turned coin oath. And beneath cliffs jingling with new pennons, Alyssa led Equinox in first true flight, beyond the island's crags, wings fanning like stained glass cathedrals against a thunder-lavender sky. Spring rallied late that year, yet when it came, it carried peculiar signs. Cherry blossoms fell in whorls of half-frozen petals. River ice cracked but did not vanish, floating like shards of mirror down the Mander. In the north, children awoke to hoarfrost fern patterns glittering on bedroom beams, delicate but stylized into the turned coin rune. Wherever frost lingered too long, it melted by midday to reveal new sprouts, hardy enough to pierce snow. It seemed as though frost itself had learned to pause, grateful for flame's brief dance, then yield. Maegor watched these omens from atop the battlements at Winterfell, where he traveled with Aenys and Alyssa 3 months after the conclave, invited by Lord Brandon Stark's daughter, Lady Catelyn Iceward. She was a stern mistress of her father's war room, ruling during his illness. Her letter spoke of deeper rumblings, quakes along the wall's foundation, hairline fractures creeping through black ice. She begged the Triune rulers to inspect the ancient bulwark. At sunrise they rode north, flanked by Emberguard and Stark Rangers. Equinox soared overhead, still growing but large enough to cast a swift shadow. When they reached the wall at Long Barrow Gate, they found the black ice gouged by fissures 3 men wide, slithering up the face in jagged claws. Wisps of chill vapor seeped through cracks, carrying the faint hiss of whispered voices. On the parapet, Maegor pressed a gauntlet against the ice. It thrummed with a frequency he knew, matching the dim pulse of Dawnglass. He looked at Alyssa. She nodded. The gnawing claws anew, she said. Balance is shifting. Aenys hummed softly. The frost threads trembled as though listening. He tuned the melody, coaxing silence. Fissures halted their spread, but did not seal. We must reinforce the vein, he said. Do it now, before this crack becomes a maw. Maegor turned to the brothers of the Night's Watch. Prepare to march. Sir Jace Rivers's successor, a lean woman called Commander Vieira Snow, shook her head. Night's Watch numbers thin, Your Grace. If the vein fails while our backs are turned, who mans the wall? Maegor placed Blackfire's point into ice, sparks dancing. Leave half your force. The rest come. Take the Emberguard if you doubt. Vieira studied the sword's half frost, half fire edge, then nodded. So the company marched, pressing through gusts that tasted of ancient burial. Equinox overhead dove and climbed, mapping cracks below and screeching warnings when silt of darkness burbled near the ice ribs. They reached the vein in 4 days, crossing a freshly riven glacier, shaped like an open jaw. The cathedral of black ice loomed dimmer than memory. Inside, the ribs had thickened, glistening with crystals that flickered between mirror and void. The seal still shone subdued crimson where Blackfire sat embedded, but around it, new nodes bloomed, pits of frost void whispering to one another across lines of ice. Alyssa approached, Equinox clinging to her shoulder now that the dragon could no longer nestle on her arm. She retrieved a stoppered vial, liquid dawn glass in molten form. I must infuse the cracks, she said. Maegor, you hold the sword's crossguard tight. When I say pivot, pull Blackfire free half an inch, just enough to breathe in new alloy. What if the gate yawns? He asked. Then we push, she replied, eyes steel. No retreat this time. Aenys stepped to their side, harp strapped across chest. He inhaled despite the bitter air. And then the world jolted. Not tremor. Heartbeat from beneath. The ribs flashed ultraviolet, and a single point of darkness erupted, disgorging a creature unlike the prior avatars. Part wild elk, part twisting smoke, crowned with antlers of glass. It stepped onto the mirror, frost branching under hooves. Equinox screamed in challenge, descending in a dive. The elk wraith raised its head and opened a mouth it did not possess. A coil of void shot upward. Equinox snapped wings, spiraled, but the void clung like tar, sapping flight. The hatchling faltered, slammed into a rib, shrieked pain. At once Maegor hurled his hammer. Frostfire traced its arc, shattering the void coil. Alyssa drew a throwing disc forged of dawn glass, flicked it. The disc cleaved through the elk wraith's flank. The creature screamed, a sound more wind than throat, and dissolved to drifting shards. More will come, Aenys gasped. He placed fingers on harp strings, unsure if voice would hold. He sang. The melody braided the turned coin hymn with a harsher undertone Kara, the rememberer, had taught him, the language of frost memory. Echoes rebounded across ribs, trapping resonance like an inside-out bell. The pits of void shrank, buffeted by counterwave dotchoro. Alyssa popped the vial. Dawn glass fluid glowed, swirling. Pivot! Maegor planted boots, wrenched Blackfire half an inch. Instantly, frost void shot upward, trying to bite the opening. She dashed the vial's blood into the gap. Molten dawn glass poured like mercury, hissing where it touched void. Light exploded, silver and crimson braiding into helix. Maegor forced the sword back, sealing new alloy within. The ribs shuddered, but rather than cracking, they harmonized, emitting a single note. Clear, ringing, familiar. It was the exact pitch of Aegon's voice on the eve he drilled armies at Field of Fire. Invincible, commanding. Maegor felt something untwist in his chest. Yet the gnawing fought. High above, fissures multiplied. A second wraith burst through. A giant hand of ice, knuckles like glaciers, clawing. Equinox, recovered, flashed silver frost and red heat, weaving blasts that alternately froze the wraith solid, then splintered it to glimmering dust, each move an echo of Balerion's noble rage and Rhaenys' graceful fury. But the wraiths kept coming. Swarms of shadow ravens, serpents of glassy ice, faceless riders astride winds. The Night's Watch shield wall buckled, and Emberguard axes hissed through curses. Stark rangers loosed arrows tipped in dragonglass that whined like falling stars. Aenys' song soared to a scream, blood flecking his lips. Alyssa's second vial shattered across the seal. Balanced glow surged outward, but two pits remained unsatisfied. Slurping energy. She paled. The last vial hung at her belt, near empty. She looked to Maegor, eyes wide with quiet request. One more breach, one more pour. Maegor nodded, raising black fire for final pivot. Then a void lance speared down from the ceiling, striking him through thigh plating. He roared, staggering. Blood steamed on ice. Aenys broke song. Sprinted. He clutched the sword's blade above Maegor's grip, raw palms smoking. Maegor's eyes, blazing through helm, met his brother's. Together, he growled. They wrenched. Void hissed, but Aenys's residual song lingered, bracing them. Alyssa dumped the last dribble of dawn glass, golden quicksilver sliding into every pore. Equinox landed trance-still upon the seal, pressed nose to alloy, exhaling a breath half vapor, half ember. Light dazzled. The pits collapsed. Frost ribs blazed red. Flame hardened at tips to crystalline spears. A shockwave rippled outward, flattening wraiths mid-charge, vaporizing them into snowflakes that winked to nothing. Silence rang, the hush after thunder. Maegor sagged. Aenys held him upright. Their blood mingled on the mirror. The sword pulsed steady, the cadence strong but not frantic. The seal cooled to black-crimson glass once more. Alyssa knelt, finger to pulse. Then she smiled, first time in years free of strain. "Balance stands," she whispered. Maegor laughed, ragged as broken arrows, but triumphant. "Hear that, father? We hold." Equinox trilled, wings folding. She bowed her head to the sword, a gesture as ancient as flame, as new as dawn. When spring tipped into a summer, no maester's almanac predicted. Cool mornings, mild noons, crimson sunsets, word spread, the turned coin summer. Crops doubled where charms hung. Watermills froze at dawn but thawed by breakfast. Diseases bound to damp chills faded, purged by balanced breezes. In King's Landing the High Septon himself washed the Septon steps with water heated by dawn-glass embers, confessing the faith's blindness to wonder. The faith militant stowed arms. At Storm's End, sellsword armies dissolved, their financiers bankrupt as cold ports no longer needed imported grain. At Winterfell, Lady Catelyn retired father to hearth-chair under tapestries, quoting Aenys' hymn as lullaby. And on Dragonstone, alchemists built a grand bulwark called the Prism Forge to create dawn glass by the ton. For plowshares, for armor, for stained windows that refracted sunrise into every hovel. One evening, Maegor and Aenys stood atop the Red Keep's ramparts overlooking a city lit by alternating lanterns, one red, one frost white, repeating like the turned coin itself. Equinox circled overhead, now thrice the size of a warhorse. Beneath them bells rang the hour of tranquil flame. Aenys exhaled, breath visible, even in mild air. "Do you think it lasts?" Maegor watched dawn-glass lamplight ripple across tiled roofs. "No siege lasts forever," he said. "But with balance, maybe no siege is required." He flexed healed leg. Scar of void lance now covered by dawn-glass shinguard. "We will watch, we will guard, and when the world tips again, we push." A low roar rumbled. They looked up. Equinox hovered moment, then dived toward the east, toward open sea streaked with purple dusk. At the horizon, a slim shimmer glowed. Aurora ghost, memory of the gnawing's hum. Aenys set fingers to harp. He played 4 notes. Strong, clear. Equinox answered with a cry bright as polished steel. Maegor smiled beneath his helm. "Let the cold remember and the fire forgive, brother, and let us live between, ever the fulcrum, ever the dawn." K.N.D. Pow. Warm twilight settled over the whispering grasses of the reach, draping gold across rolling vineyard hills, and the lavender haze of orchards, in full blossom. It should have looked like any other placid evening in high summer, but Aenys Targaryen could taste the tension riding the breeze, the same way a troubadour senses a harp's tuning peg beginning to slip. Small things betrayed an imbalance. The breeze carried no bee-song despite the blooms, and the light itself had a faint prismatic flare, barely visible, like the mirage of dawn glass when sunlight strikes it at a precise angle. To the south, the sunset glowed a bruised amethyst rather than the usual reach rose. Beautiful, yes. Wrong all the same. He rode at the head of the royal progress, an entourage stitched together of House Tyrell's most silver-tongued stewards, a quartet of dawn-glass emberguard, whose armor caught dusk in spectral rainbow flashes, and a makeshift choir of 5 novices from the citadel chosen for their pitch-perfect recall of the turned coin hymn. When the party crested the ridge overlooking Bright Bloom Manor, ancestral demesne of Lord Belric Thorne, Aenys pulled his destrier to a halt. The manor's torchlit battlements shimmered oddly, outlines rippling like heat haze, and 3 watchfires burned with frost-white flames rather than orange. He had hoped Belric's pledge a season past meant those flames were honest dawn-glass braziers, a public vow that Thorne now stood unshakably with the crown. But something churned in Aenys' chest beyond mere suspicion. In the twilight, the manor looked less a home than a mirage built of cracked mirror shards reflecting a half-remembered world. Before he could summon a greeting, one of the emberguard cantered forward, a wiry woman named Lysara Rivers. "Your Grace." She pointed her dawn-glass mace at the gate. "The ward light is wrong. The glass flares white without the red core. That occurs only when the frost side of the lattice overpowers the flame." Aenys felt a phantom chill graze his collar. "Show me." They rode the slope. The novices quieted mid-rehearsal, their hymn fading into the hush of insectless fields. Inside the manor yard, servants lined up in 2 files, heads bowed. Their hair and eyebrows were tipped in frost, rimed even in the soft summer warmth. They shivered, not from fear. They seemed numb to emotion entirely. Lord Belric emerged in ceremonial tunic. Pale crystals dusted his cuffs like lace. He bowed. "King Aenys, welcome to Bright Bloom. Forgive the unusual fires. Our glass-smith miscalibrated the torchstones." Aenys dismounted slowly. One novice tripped from his saddle, eyes rolling. The lad's fingertips were already blue. Lysara swept him away to the emberguard's mobile tent. Aenys looked Belric in the eye. "Your smith did more than miscalibrate. Dawn glass needs balanced flame to cure. Frost white alone means you smelted with vacuum. Void where heat should be." Belric's smile wavered. "The southern kiln malfunctioned." "Both kilns?" Aenys gestured at the 3 white torches. "And your servants? Their lashes are ice." Belric's gaze ticked to one side. Every other servant breathed in eerie synchrony, exhaling clouds of vapor despite balmy air. Aenys recognized the rhythm. It matched the subterranean breath of the gnawing, the cadence he had nearly burned his voice extinguishing years ago. His stomach knotted. Before he could speak, the manor's largest gate swung wide. 4 hulking shapes lumbered through, men wearing plate lined with shards of silver glass. The faith militant's newest contrivance, rumored forged in hidden sept smithies to mimic dawn glass, but tuned wholly to frost. Their breastplates bore a 7-pointed star etched over a coin split clean down the middle, flame side ground away. Behind them walked a septon robed in undyed wool, eyes covered with a band of white silk, the blinding cloth of penitence. In his right hand hung a censer. The smoke puffing from its vents swirled black. The sight chilled Aenys worse than battlefield steel. The High Septon had promised obedience months ago, bending knee at Dragonstone after Maegor shattered the Conclave's conspiracy. Yet here stood proof of a splinter sect, maybe bigger than rumor. The Frost Star. The bandaged priest spoke in a voice hollow with cold. "A balanced realm cannot abide a coin with dual faces, for duality is division. Only purged flame yields perfect stillness." Lysara Rivers slid beside Aenys, mace up. "They mean to freeze the lattice at its heart. No flame, no gnawing, no life either." Aenys lifted his harp case from his saddle. "Our flame is not for purging but for tempering," he said, voice still hoarse yet clear over the unnatural hush. "Lay down those counterfeits before you crack the world again." The priest chuckled, a dry rattle as though lungs were powdered snow. Words. We carry void fire blessed by the stranger. It drinks all warmth. Your hymns will hush, then hush the hush, until no noise remains. He raised the censer. The smoke gusted out, spiraling up, coiling above the torches. Each white flame flared. Snowflakes materialized midair. Lysara hurled a dawn-glass grenade. It detonated in silver pulse, vaporizing flakes, but immediately more formed. The priest beckoned, and the 4 Froststar Knights advanced, twin axe blades limbed in hoarfrost. Aenys set fingers to harp strings. He strummed a single harmonic, turned coin's root note, pitched lower, laced with that cracked ice-tongue lilt he learned in the vein. The vibration rippled along the courtyard, resonating with dawn-glass shards embedded in the walls. White flames guttered for a heartbeat. But the priest's censer coughed darker plumes, and the resonance faltered. Oi, fire. No more coaxing. Aenys slung the harp behind him and swung into combat. Improvised, yes, but he had practiced cutlass drill since Maegor insisted they train side by side. Lysara met a knight with her mace, its frostfire edge cleaving armor that should have sheared ordinary bronze. Sparks of blue and red burst on impact. Another knight lunged at Aenys. The king parried, sliding his blade along the frostglass axe haft, knocking it wide. His lungs burned, thin from song, but adrenaline bridged weakness. A second strike rang steel. Third. He feinted high, cut low, severing straps. The knight's codpiece burst in crackling shards. Yet cold radiated from the armor so fiercely his own blade frosted. The novices, corralled by stewards, began chanting the turned coin chorus, brittle voices layering, amplifying the harp's residual hum-ha. Ice crystals forming in the air drifted toward them. Slowed, melted. Servants trapped in frost shook free as though waking from dream. Some fainted. Others stared in horror at the encroaching melee. Belric Thorn watched, slack-jawed. Aenys sidestepped, cut the belt from a knight. But that warrior backhanded him with gauntlet edge, shattering 2 harp fingers. Pain lanced. He dropped his sword. Then a roar cracked the manor open. From the sky hurtled a comet of refracted color. Equinox Doti. She dove through the main breach, talons forward, slammed atop a Froststar Knight. Vapor spouted silver, encasing armor in rime, instantly followed by red-gold beam that vaporized the frozen plate, enemy and all. The courtyard erupted in dazzling light. Remaining knights stumbled, veering from the heat-frost whiplash. Belric staggered back, arms raised. Please. Mercy. It is the Faith's faction. I thought to steady the northern quakes by giving them frostglass. They promised no bloodshed. Aenys clutched his ruined hand, teeth gritting. Your bargain delivered the knife to our ribs. He gestured to Lysara. She seized Thorn roughly. The priest drew a dagger of pure void glass, solid absence, edges glowing as though lit from behind by night. Before he could stab, Equinox's tail swept, shattering wrist. The dagger clanged, leaving a dent in stone that sizzled, turning black. The priest collapsed to knees. Aenys strode, face alabaster with anger rarely seen. No one is forced to choose imbalance, he said quietly. You worship purity, thinking flame alone corrupts. But pure ice shatters as cruelly. He lifted the censer with his good hand and slammed it down. Smoke scattered like frightened birds, dissolving in dawn-glass hums. The priest whispered something, perhaps prayer, perhaps curse. Crystal hoarfrost crept up his robe in spidering lines. Self-contained, as though his own void fire recoiled. Aenys turned to one surviving Froststar Knight crawling under a cart. Go, he ordered. Carry word that the turned coin stands. You freeze, we warm, together blood flows. Resist, and you fracture. The knight shook off helm. To Aenys' shock, she was young, no older than Lysara. Eyes wide with terror, she scrambled out and fled through a postern. Good. A living messenger may do what 100 threats never could. 3 days after the skirmish, Maegor arrived at Brightbloom with a full Emberguard cohort, scouring the manor. They found storerooms of frostglass weapons, prisons tuned to amplify void fire, and account books linking tithes to rogue septas in the crownlands. Maegor's fury boiled, yet he suppressed impulse to raise the estate. Instead he marched Belric Thorn, wrists in dawn-glass shackles, to King's Landing for public trial, an act of restraint to show realm that justice under turned coin was not simply vengeance in drag. Aegon's broken fingers healed crooked but functional. Alyssa forged him a new harp with pegs that shifted tension by leather levers rather than twisting knobs. He learned to play anew, each chord slower yet richer, like old wine. But the encounter sharpened the siblings' awareness. The lattice of balance stretched across souls as much as ice and fire. Fanatics might tilt frost. Greed might tilt flame. Worse, the void now had servants who believed emptiness holier than existence. Reports compounded. In the far east of the Dothraki Sea, fires burned blue, leaving behind petrified glass. In Ibn, dwellers returned skin blue, eyes white, claiming the sea hissed, "Remember." Even on the summer isles, coconuts cracked with sudden frost lines though humidity draped the air. The gnawing leaked influence through minds quicker than through stone, whispering to those yearning for simple absolutes. At the next council, Alyssa unrolled a world map covered in starburst markers, fissures of ideology. She said, "Every red mark denotes accounts of flame true, radicals burning shrines to hunt hypothetical frost heretics. Blue marks, frost star uprisings. Purple marks those burned by both sides. Ideals calcify to violence faster than lava to stone." And Maegor studied distribution. That cluster on Slaver's Bay. Flame-true cultists raised a frostglass warehouse. In response, Froststar zealots polluted wells with liquid void. Thousands dead. Aenys closed his eyes, listening inwardly. Harp strings wept inside memory. Words must stitch this before swords rip it beyond patchwork. Words need scaffold, Alyssa said. Equinox has matured. A demonstration of balanced breath on a world stage might pivot hearts. Maegor leaned back, gauntlet drumming table. Where? Alyssa pointed at the map's center. Old Volantis. Hub of trade, melt pot of tongues. If we show there that frost and flame joined birth life instead of ruin, merchants will spread tale faster than ravens. Aenys exhaled. Skeptical. Volantis' old blood despised Targaryen pretension. Dragon lords gone provincial. Yet he saw no better crucible. We'll need spectacle. Alyssa smiled, a glint like sunrise over ice. I have a prism. They departed in midsummer on the Sea Fang, a sleek carrack with hull sheathed in dawn-glass plating. Equinox rode thermals overhead by day and perched atop the aft mast by night, wings folded like cathedral windows, ever watchful. The voyage passed with eerie calm, winds gentle, pirates absent, as though sea itself held breath for what approached. At the mouth of the Rhoyne they beheld Volantis sprawled magnificent, two cities yoked by the long bridge. Black walls, elephant war towers, and the domes of the Red Temple blazing with night fire. The harbor master balked at Equinox's shadow, but dared not bar a ship whose hull shimmered like living rainbow. Gawkers thronged quays, mouths agape. On Dragonstone's order, Maegor met the Triarchs in their marble audience chamber. He offered gifts, sacks of dawn-glass kernels, raw material still pliable, able to cure into bracelets that glowed soothing pink when wearer felt wrath. Stress prisms, Aenys explained. Visual reminder of inner heat. Manage it, or it fractures into frost. The Triarchs, ever keen on trade, salivated. Yet the greatest marvel waited until dusk festival. Alyssa's prism, a massive multifaceted obelisk, was hoisted by crane to the center of Elephant Plaza. People gathered in thousands, lanterns bobbing. Maegor stood atop a dais beside the obelisk, black fire glimmering. Aenys took position with harp high on balcony. Alyssa emerged leading Equinox on chain of woven dawn-glass links. Her voice rang clear. Behold the fulcrum dragon, born of flame and frost. Equinox reared, wings splaying. A hush blanketed the plaza. Alyssa signaled. Equinox inhaled, exhaled first stage. Silver mist that swept across cobbles, flash freezing them to mirror ice. Crowd gasped, the temperature plummeted. Before terror bred stampede, the dragon released second stage. Red-gold core fire that slid along identical path, carving molten veins which sealed the ice into translucent slabs etched with swirling art. When flame met frost, they fused into dawn-glass pavement under people's feet. Warm to stand on, cool to touch, emitting soft rosy light. Gasps turned to awed cheers. Then Aegon struck the first chord of turned coin. The plaza hummed. The obelisk drank resonance. Light refracted upward, painting aurora ribbons across sky. Where red bands crossed blue, purple shimmer blossomed. Sign of perfect join. Maegor stepped forward, raising black fire. Balance is not compromise. Balance births strength greater than some. Be neither pure flame that devours nor pure frost that stifles. Be coin turned between, forever spinning. He drove the sword into a socket atop the obelisk. Dawnglass groaned. The sword's frostfire core spilled color through every facet. At that moment, the purple sky ribbon pulsed and radiated outward. Witnesses felt a vibration in bone. Songs of frost memories and fire dreams intertwining. Many dropped to knees, tears streaming without clear cause. They felt whole. What none saw, save Alyssa, was a shadow at Plaza's rim. A thin man cloaked in ash-white hood low. His breath left no vapor, though air remained chill. His gaze fixed upon Equinox and Blackfire. Beneath his sleeve, a dagger of void glass twitched. She moved, but late. He lunged past guards, the blade arced for Blackfire's hilt, aiming to sever the conduit. Equinox shrieked, but humans in crowd blocked path. At last breath, a whistle split air, then clang. Lysara Rivers, ever shadowing Aegon since bright bloom, had hurled her mace. It struck the dagger into plating on the obelisk, pinning limb and weapon. Voidglass shattered into splinters, spraying dark motes that hissed on contact with Dawnglass, leaving pucks but no breach. The assassin howled. Frost smoked from his wound, climbing like vines along chest, encasing him. In heartbeats he froze solid. Alyssa whispered a word. Equinox exhaled a pinpoint beam, disintegrating statue and void alike. Where enemy stood, only drifting motes remained, soon swept by breeze into hot-cold oblivion. The Triarchs, shaken, nevertheless proclaimed allegiance to turned coin. Caravans left Volantis bearing dawn-glass lanterns and songs of a dragon of equilibrium. The assassin's corpse, what fragments remained, was identified at docks as Brother Pale, Rogue Septon, who claimed the stranger visited him in mirror pools. The Froststar had lengths even Maegor's spies failed to measure. But the demonstration kindled more hope than fear. Over months, demands for Dawnglass outpaced Dragonstow's forge. Alyssa licensed smithies across free cities, distributing formulas guarded by G's. Rings attuned to her voice. Protective enchantments ensuring no kiln cured frost or flame alone. Commerce soared. For a season the world sang one tune. One side of the coin chasing the other in playful spin. Still shadows lengthened in corners sunlight rarely touched. In ruins beyond Karth, archaeologists found a mosaic depicting two dragons locked in spiral, one alabaster, one obsidian, claws piercing the globe as though to wrest it apart. And beneath them, a third dragon of broken mirror shards. Scholars debated. Alyssa felt unease coil whenever she studied the copy. The mosaic lacked color of Dawnglass, yet lines implied equilibrium, not as bridge but battlefield. 2 years later, on the eve of Equinox's fourth hatch day, the siblings gathered on Dragonstone's moonlit terrace. Waves below hissed against vertical cliffs. Wind tasted briny sweet. Alyssa uncorked a vintner's bottle, warmed to perfect swirl by a swirl of Equinox's breath. She poured 3 goblets. Maegor leaned elbows on the parapet. Blackfire, still obelisk scored, resting across lap. Aegon tuned new harp. Strings of Dawnglass alloy shimmering subtle lilac. They spoke of progress. Frost star cells dwindling. Flame true nigh abolished. Of the prism forge expansions. Of strange calm and gossip from the vein. Too calm. Alyssa sipped. Balance cannot plateau forever. Entropy nudges. She paused, looked skyward, where faint aurora continued nightly now, not wounded but vital, like heartbeat in heavens. We anchor a hinge. Another force circles. The mosaic's third dragon hints at it. Maegor grunted. We face frost and flame extremes. What lurks beyond duality? Aenys plucked cord. Soft. Perhaps reflection of both. Mirror dragon, emptiness filled with echoes. As if summoned, Equinox rose from courtyard, wings creaking. She glided to perch upon the tower's ring. Chest scales pulsed silvery red. She cocked head toward the north, way beyond horizon. Low growl rumbled. Alyssa's goblet trembled. Liquid rippled in concentric circles. She set it down. Something stirs there, she whispered. Next breath, a distant boom rolled across sea, like iceberg calving, yet laden with bass note of Blackfire's hum. The aurora brightened to molten violet. From the stairs, Lysara rivers dashed into view. I forgive. Urgent Revan phone dispatch. She handed scroll. Sealed with Night's Watch black wax bearing silver coin sigil. Aenys slit ribbon, read aloud. Gate stable. Seal intact. Yet above it manifestation, mirror sheen dragon formed of void light and frostfire both. Emits no heat, no cold. Merely hunger. We name it null worm. Request immediate aid. Silence. Even the wind calmed. Maegor rose, eyes aflame. Third dragon wakes. His voice, usually iron, held curiosity. Sharp. Hungry. The true test. Alyssa met his gaze, unafraid. Equinox is fulcrum. We three are her riders. Time to answer. Aenys flexed, healed fingers. Voice intact. Hammer ready, prism primed. He looked upward. Across the sky, Nullworm's distant shape shimmered faint. A silhouette against stars, huge, gliding south. He closed harp case. Let's write the last stanza. Preparations consumed 2 days. Prism forge spat dawn-glass artillery. Arrowheads, bola weights, spear tips able to refract equilibrium breath into traps. Alyssa coated Equinox talons with mirror copper to prevent void etching. Maegor reforged Blackfire once more, inlaying null steel. A dawn-glass derivative mixed with trace void captured in crystalline cages. Each new modification risked imbalance. Alyssa balanced alloys by singing pitch found only when Equinox chirped thrice in quick succession. On dawn of departure, townsfolk across Crownlands filled streets wearing turned coin pendants. They watched the convoy lift. Equinox soared first, carrying all 3 siblings in saddle trine, seat of woven glass threads resonant with each sibling's pulse. Behind, 200 in Burgard rode wyverns bred in Cahor and armored in dawn-glass scale. Above them, 100 cormorant kite drones, Alyssa's invention, toting jars of equilibrium mist. Songs rose from the crowd. Aenys felt his throat swell not with grief but awe. King who had once doubted his lungs now leading half a sky in unison. They crossed the neck by midday, riding jet streams. At twilight the wall loomed, fissures mended, but ice glowed eerie charcoal, reflecting purple aurora. Beyond stretched the vein. And there, coiling above ribs, loomed Nullworm. It dwarfed Balerion by half again, yet insubstantial, framework of shimmering facets. Each panel reflecting night sky shifted several seconds into future, like glimpsing moments yet to be. Where Equinox's flame produced heat, Nullworm's emitted emptiness, a cone wherein color drained, sound muted. Its wings beat soundlessly, but each downstroke rippled gravity. Snow dunes flattened, then bulged. Maegor tightened reins. We cripple it. Graft our flame frost lattice into its hollow marrow. Seal hunger with ember. Freeze greed with chill. No battle plan survives first contact. They dove. Embergard lanced forward, releasing drones. Equilibrium mistrailed, swirling. At first, Nullworm ignored, examining the world through reflective scales. Then, it inhaled. Void implosion sucked drones. Vapor. Half the Wyvern squad. Several riders vanished into dark core and did not re-emerge. Wyverns fell husks. The gap in sky gaped black, then flashed negative like burnt camera film. Sound died. Aenys strummed emergency chords, broadcasting resonance through Dawnglass harness into Equinox's spine. She counter-inhaled, exhaling frost heat swirl that met the implosion cone and crackling interface. A storm front of opposed forces bloomed, swirling patterns like stained glass, smashed and spun into hurricane. Some wyverns regained buoyancy, climbing free. Nullworm's swiveled head, a mask of tessellated mirrors, no eyes, only infinite tiny reflections of siblings approaching. The creature exhaled again, a beam not of void or icy heat, but pure reflection, bending light into spike that lanced between Maegor and Alyssa. The siblings felt themselves split. For instant they glimpsed alternate selves. Maegor crowned fury, Alyssa pyre witch, Aenys martyr king. Thousands of variations stitched into kaleidoscope. Ertigo.ie. Maegor roared, grounding self by hammering pommel on saddle rim. Blackfire ignited. Frost ruby flame, outer shell of chill. He hurled a spear of null steel. It pierced Nullworm's wing. Instead of tearing membrane, it blossomed into web lattice, injecting Dawnglass crystals that flashed red-blue. The monster's wing faltered, rippling with color. Alyssa flung bolas. Weights detonated equilibrium pulses, pocking Nullworm's flank with balanced scars. Each mark dimmed tessellation. Nullworm screamed. First sound, high note of shattering mirrors. Skeins of void light extruded like barbs, raking sky. One gored Embergard captain clean through, draining color from armor, turning man and beast to monochrome statues that shattered. Aenys sang. Harp strings shimmered. His voice, no longer hoarse, climbed to crystal apex. The turned coin hymn crashed into frost-tongue runes, then soared into third mode. Mirrorwave, a scale he'd only imagined. Sound entered Nullworm's wounds, ricocheting inside hollow form, finding resonance. Mirror scales flickered. Some panels fell away, disintegrating. Equinox dove, talons glowing. She plunged through open rib seam, entering creature's hollow chest. Within, swirling emptiness, a starfield of possible realities unmoored. Alyssa clutched saddle, guiding Fulcrum Dragon to the very center where a dark core pulsed. She pressed palm to plating, spoke forging chant. Equinox exhaled inside the beast. Silver vapor filled void, condensing into frost crystals. Red heat flared, fusing them. A lattice grew. Humming. Nullworm thrashed. Outside, Maegor steered wyverns to slash mirror joints, widening cracks for radiating Dawnglass veins. Aenys' song modulated, matching frequency of newborn lattice. The combined assault spread color inside Nullworm like ink in water. The monster convulsed, blowback shearing sky. It tried to inhale, but equilibrium lattice now damped suction. Panels fissured outward. In final desperation, it folded wings, diving for the gate, intending to merge with gnawing beneath, fuse hunger with wound. Equinox raced inside chest, siblings clinging. Maegor shouted through speaking tubes, "Hold course! Become the wedge!" They burst from tail stump yards above the ice ribs. Nullworm smashed onto seal, shattering ribs. Blackfire remained anchored. Dawnglass conduits flared. Alyssa triggered last reserve. A core bomb of condensed equilibrium mist, planted near Nullworm's heart. She armed fuse by whisper. 10. Heartbeat. 5. Soundless. None. Blinding dawn. Aegon inverted night. Purple auroras avalanched into ribbons of dawnfire spiral. Seal drank blast, welding Nullworm's mirrored shards into new shell around gate. The beast howled as its facets imploded. shrinking into knot of dawn glass frost fire that fused seamlessly with obsidian mirror. When glare died, only a chrysalis remained, smooth, reflective, pulsing, steady. Silence, then cracking. Not of break, but of molten glass cooling. Ribs regrew thicker. The knot unfolded petal-like, leaving embedded within the seal a circular lens wherein swirling colors balanced perfect. Red, blue, silver, gold. From depths of lens, no void peered. Only the reflection of sky's aurora. A hush passed across battlefield. Surviving wyverns wheeled, dripping shards. Embarguard watched. Knight's watch on wall removed helms, disbelief stark. Nullworm was gone. In its place, gate reforged stronger. Maegor landed, stumbled off saddle onto ice, knee battered. Aenys followed, gripping brother's arm. Alyssa slid down Equinox wing. Fulcrum dragon collapsed, weary but alive. Chest scales glowed gentle lilac. The siblings approached lens. Within reflection they saw themselves not split, but joined, 3 figures braided by spectral coin. Behind them, faintly, shapes of their parents and fallen kin, as if memory approved. In that moment, peace kindled, not final, but enough. Maegor laid Blackfire flat against new seal. Frost ruby blade hummed, content. Aenys placed harp beside sword. Strings thrummed same chord. Alyssa touched lens. It warmed, cool surface exhaling breath of balanced life. Equinox roared once, a call neither joyous nor mournful, but timeless. Across sky, aurora brightened, shifting to palette, where neither flame nor frost dominated, instead a sunrise that never ends. Years later, chronicles would name this the ternary convergence. Scholars argued which dragon won. Balerion's memory, Equinox birth, or Nullworm's defeat. Balladeer simplified into myth of 3 heads balancing world. Hammer, song, prism. Children clutched, turned coin talismans, knowing if their emotions raged too hot or too cold, lens in heaven might dim. Alyssa's prism forges became universities, teaching chemistry of compassion. Aenys' hymns evolved into meditative rites across cultures. Maegor's and Burgard patrolled not as conquerors, but as stewards against extremes. And deep beneath vein the seal pulsed. Neither barrier nor prison now, but living heart moderating earth's breath. It sang in geologic time, a lullaby to fires below and snows above. Giants' ghosts listened in ice. Merfolk heard through whale song. Even crows on battlements cocked heads at intervals, as though recognizing cadence older than flight. On quiet evenings in Dragonstone, siblings gathered atop same terrace where Nullworm's omen first felt. Equinox, grown colossal yet gentle, slept coiled around basalt spire. They drank sea-salted wine and watched sky paint itself. Sometimes they spoke of future. Maybe forging starships of dawn-glass sails. Maybe exploring old Valeria's smoking chasms for echoes of earlier fulcrums. More often they sat in comfortable silence, knowing balance needs breath. One night, Aenys strummed a new chord sequence. Children from village below climbed cliff path. Curiosity, bright dot. Maegor laughed, waved them to sit. Alyssa passed each dawn-glass pebble, glowing soft. The children placed pebbles around terrace perimeter, forming circle. Equinox opened one eye. Huffed warm cool mist that lit pebbles. Ingredient. Aenys sang words simple enough for children. We are fire that knows the kiss of snow. We are frost that feels the embers glow. We are coin that spins on edge of dawn. We are world that wakes when night is gone. Voices young and old joined. Song carried across sea, mingling with waves. Beneath them, the seal pulsed slower, restful. Above, aurora curved into smile. Balance lived, not as ceasefire, but as dance, step of heat, step of chill, pivot in trust. And in that endless waltz, the world breathed, dreaming not of conquest or purity or void, but of harmony so vast even dragons grew quiet to listen. Ah, ni, ka, wonder, ah. Gulls wheeled low over the argent surface of Blackwater Bay, their wings carving shallows of late summer mist that hugged Mager's prow like half-remembered dreams. The royal cutter, Dawn's Edge, crested a swell and leveled, her dawn-glass ram hissing as it parted the gentle tide. Mager stood at the bowsprit in plain travel leathers, no iron helm, no ceremonial pauldrons, only blackfire sheathed across his back, and a coil of rope strapped to one thigh. At intervals he closed his eyes and inhaled deep enough to taste the salt on his tongue, reaffirming to Merrow that the ocean still smelled of living promise rather than the cold scrap of Nullworm's void. Each breath a blessing. Behind him on deck, carpenters from the Prism Forge measured timbers for a refit. Dawn's Edge would soon host a new mast of laminated dawn-glass struts capable of catching stormlight and translating it into subtle bursts of maglev drift, Alyssa's latest contrivance, part sailing, part levitation. Mager let them work. His mind churned with the same quiet intensity that once guided war drills, but the enemy had changed shape. Imbalances subtle as size, flickers in the aurora that spelled small deviations, eddies inside dawn-glass stockpiles hinting at minute impurities. His hammer hand remained idle, yet he felt the weight of that weapon in every decision. Shape the strike too hard, metal warps. Strike too soft, metal forgets you struck it all. Balance required constant forging. When the last plank was laid for day's toil, Mager signaled the bosun to furl sail and ground anchor, offshore of Dragonstone's eastern cliff. There he slipped over the side onto a waiting skiff rowed by two Imbergard. Only a few hundred yards of dark water separated boat from a small basalt cove, where torches winked like foxfire. The oars cut smooth strokes, gliding them into the hush of inlet. At the landing quay stood Lysera Rivers, flanked by half a dozen cadets in new lamellar, their coin-silver breastplates glowing with faint rosy undertones that denoted a perfect ratio of frost and flame. Lysera saluted. Mager answered with a half-smile, the gesture reserved for those whose loyalty transcended rank. "Your sister waits in the deep forge," Lysera said as Mager tied off. "She asks for fresh eyes on the endo-prism arrays before hardening." Mager followed her through a tunnel that wound beneath Dragonstone's outer wall and dropped into a vaulted cavern so hot the air rippled in living skeins. Emerging onto a platform, he saw the heart of the mountain, an amphitheater of stalactite pylons fused by lava flows, each strung with catwalks where alchemists in soot-dusted leathers tended crucibles. At the center, a pit yawned like a forge god's pupil, molten gold and magma swirling together. Suspended above on a gimbal was Alyssa's new wonder. Two enormous dawn-glass lenses arranged edge to edge, spinning on helical shafts. Every rotation threw prismatic shards of light across the cavern walls, painting attendant smiths in kaleidoscopes of flame-cool color. Alyssa stood on the radio gantry, hair bound tight in a soldier's tail, face smudged with charcoal. She waved, and the crane operator ratcheted the gantry inward until Mager could clasp her forearm. "Beautiful, is it not?" she shouted above the pulsing roar. A double convex housing, one lens tuned to heat, one to chill. The helix equalizes torque, so neither overtakes the other. When the final casing seals, we lower it into the core. If the seal in the vein trembles, this remote heartstone will echo, dampen, recalibrate. Think of it, brother, an artificial fulcrum under our own roof. N.D. Mager traced a finger along the outer rim, warm to touch but edged by crisp bite that raised gooseflesh. Fine work. But will the earth abide a second heart? The first is content but hardly silent. Alyssa snorted. The earth will sing a harmony. I measured vibrations from the vein last month. Ever since Nullworm's chrysalis fused into the mirror, the pulse oscillates fractionally sharper on each beat. A natural instrument shifts pitch as wood dries. So too, the gate. We must tune against drift. Damn Tor. Mager studied her face. The lines at her eyes had deepened. Not from aging. She was 3 years his junior, but from squints into furnace brilliance, from nights spent bending equations until dawn. How long since you slept? An hour here, a nap there, she said, dismissive. Equinox guards my dreams. Who dares trouble a woman with a dragon for a nightlight? He chuckled. Even guardians tire. Promise me you'll rest once balance coil is set. Before she could answer, a runner dashed along the gantry. A page in Stormland green. Prince, princess, portents from Old Town. He panted, offering a sealed copper tube. Maegor slid parchment free and scanned. His eyes narrowed. Aenys reports the mirror tide is 5 days early, he said. The whispering tower bells chimed minor sixth instead of perfect fifth when turn coin hymn was played at vespers. Maesters think a frequency slip propagates through ley pulses between Valyrian ruins. Alyssa's brow furrowed. Old Town sits far from rift lines. For signals to shift there means deeper resonance drift than I measured. Either the chrysalis compresses faster, or something in old Valyria hums louder. Maegor folded letter. You mean the Scourge Islands. Slaver's Bay calls them the Bleeding Keys, she corrected. Bird's mouth names differ, but each tongue claims those smoking ruins house more than bones. If a second null worm? No. Maegor's voice cut. The chrysalis merged with gate, shards reconfigured into singular entity. The gnawing cannot spit out an anchor, unless someone in Valyria toys with remnants of anti-lattice. Then now Sal. Alyssa strode to a lever and halted the lens spin. Lights dimmed. The cavern grew thunder quiet. Then we go. Not we, Maegor said. Finish the endoprism. If we strip Dragonstone of Fulcrum Child and Architect both, we risk leaving Heartland undefended. I will sail south with an Emberguard wing, and Equinox, if she consents. A scraping roar vibrated rafters, as if the dragon had heard through lava veins. They exchanged a knowing look. Alyssa laid a hand on his forearm. Bring Aenys. His pitch locates anomalies faster than any device, and keep Lazara at your back. She smiled faintly. Someone must restrain your heroic foolishness. He squeezed her shoulder, then turned, cloak skirling in furnace breeze. Forge your heartstone, he said over shoulder. I'll safeguard mine. Equinox banked above the port of Old Town, wings strobing dawn fire so bright the Hightower's great beacon dimmed by comparison. Near the wharf, Maegor dismounted onto a jetty where Aenys awaited in traveling cloak, the color of unshed tears, harp strapped across back. Lysara Rivers, armor newly scoured, loosed the saddle packs and greeted Aenys with an awkward half-bow. Then all eyes turned to the slug-belly merchant cog moored at the customs pier. Sea Pennants, chartered by a secret consortium of Carthene glassmakers, rumored to traffic in forbidden relics dredged from Valyrian seafloors. Captain swears he shipped only pumpkins from the Summer Isles, Aenys said, voice still sanded coarse. Dockmaster's manifest lists 6 cargo crates unlabeled. Prism scry stones brightened cold blue when lowered near hold. Maegor's jaw clenched. Frost-tuned artifacts from the keys. And I unearthed a second clue. Aenys proffered a clay pot, barely wider than a fist. Its glaze glinted mirror black. The potter received it 2 nights ago. Inside, ash of glass, void forged, laced with bloodroot. That mixture seeds resonance defects, converts equilibrium lamellar into brittle frost veins. Maegor cursed softly. Sabotage. He scanned harbor silhouettes, creaking masts, gull droppings, complacent watchlights. Shadows within shadows. We intercept before cargo spreads inland. At dawn's first blush, Emberguard squads boarded Sea Pennants, cleaving hatch beams with axes, descending to dank hold where sour pumpkins sagged atop crates of goat hair. Beneath the top layer, they found cylinders of snow-white slag, each carved with the 7-pointed star, severed by a vertical line. Frost star glyph. Null steel linings sealed the frost aura within. Lysara fitted iron muzzle over her mouth to filter vapors. A single cylinder hissed against tongs, temperature dropping 20 degrees. Enough void frost to seed a nullworm embryo, she muttered. Someone cultivates hunger. They marched the captain to interrogation. But even before Maegor could question, the man's eyes glazed with hoarfrost, and he collapsed. Blood crystallizing on tongue. Cyanotic fissures split cheeks. Aenys stepped back, stricken. No mortal poison. Aegeus of frost promise, triggered to silence. Still, they gleaned from logbooks that cylinders boarded at Iskatar, the once ruined port nearest the smoking sea, now partially resettled by desperate fisher clans. Maegor wasted little deliberation. They would sail that hour, Equinox coasting overhead as convoy. The voyage south along coast of Valyrian Peninsula tested will. Ash storms rolled from decayed caldera. Sea hissed as glass pellets fell. Even Equinox faltered, wings coated in soot. Closer to Iskatar, the water darkened to tar slick, reflecting no star. Prism compasses spun. 3 nights out, the convoy encountered lights. A flotilla of skiffs, rowed by figures in white robes, hair streaming salt gray, faces hidden behind masks of shattered mirror fragments. Between boats, they towed a massive net, glittering with frost. Lysera raised spyglass. They dredged dragon bones, she reported. Indeed, pale wreckage jutted from the net. Elongated vertebrae coated in pearlescent frost glass, as though harvested and dipped in void. A skull surfaced, maw yawning to swallow moon. Maegor ordered signals flare. Equinox descended with shriek, vapor, then fire lancing waterline. Boats scattered, nets tore. Some robed dredgers dropped oars, arms raised in worship. Others hurled void-infused pottery that exploded into snowballs of silence, muting thuds of wyvern wing beats. Embergard rained dawnglass arrows, each bolt dissolving hush pockets into rainbow spray. One skiff broke formation and dashed for open sea. Dragon skull, still lashed. Maegor and Lysera leapt aboard longboat with 8 marines, gave chase. The skull's hollow orbits glowed internal frost, as though eyes reborn in death. Maegor caught hull, vaulted, landed amid dredgers. A woman's voice hissed, "The hungry mirror will dine." She drew obsidian shard, lunged. Lysera intercepted, mace crushing weapon and wrist. But cold blossomed from skull, vapor swirling into shape of partial dragon face. The silhouette mirrored Equinox, scaled pattern identical yet inverted, frost dominating flame marks. Maegor felt mirror fear, Nullworm's child. He drove black fire into bone between eye sockets. Dawn glass core flared. The frostlight sputtered, but did not die. Instead it slithered back along blade, kissing guard with frost. At once, Lysera slashed chain, releasing skull to sea. The siren face collapsed into bubbles, swallowed by black. Silence surged, then water roared. The woman prisoner stared at receding wake, eyes brimming with glassy tears. "We freed it," she whispered. Half grin, half sob. The ocean gate yawns. You cannot seal 2 holes with 1 stopper. Maegor hauled her upright. "Where is Ocean Gate?" She barked laughter that rattled bone. "Under ruins naval, the throat of Valyria, where old blood still sizzles. You will hear its call when the moon sweats shadow." They dragged her aboard flagship. At dawn, she died singing static, voice frequencies beyond human range, shattering glass on deck rails. Only dawn glass stood unbroken. Iskatar emerged from morning haze like a scar. Jagged jetties, shanty huts perched on cooled lava flows, smokestacks belching gray. Refugees milled barefoot near piers. Quarry slaves hauled blocks of glassy slag to kilns stoked by brine-coated driftwood. Overseers wore white masks. Overlooking all, perched on a rise of cinder, stood a half-collapsed citadel forged from bones. Literal vertebrae of ancient dragons mortared together. In the inner courtyard, Maegor counted 9 massive pillars at once. Spines arranged like obelisks, each carved in frost star script. Atop central dais lay a lens of polished void glass, broader than a carriage wheel. Aenys dismounted and moved toward lens as though drawn by gravity. Song hummed in throat unbidden. minor third sliding down to tritone. He knelt, touched edge. Pulse of cold hammered ribcage. In the reflection he saw not his face, but Nullworm's visor of mirrors. A thought seeped. Hunger is form of love. He recoiled, breaking contact. Breath ragged. Mager stormed dais, cracked lens with hammer pommel. Void glass spider-webbed, exhaled smoky sigh. Almost relief. At fracture's center, a trickle of molten silver bled. Lysara scooped sample into vial. Anti-lattice slurry, she said. Harvest enough. Feed it bones. You materialize a second Nullworm anywhere you choose. They paced outer yard. In pits, artisans fired frost glass arrowheads, shaping them with tongs. Children, barefoot, skin blotched with frostburn, turned grinding wheels. Many hummed snatches of a fragmentary chant, small voices weaving dissonant line that stabbed air with tension. Aenys listened with dread. They sang inversion of turned coin, flame suppressed, frost triumphant, music as poison. He tried humming counterpoint. Children jolted, clasping ears. Overseers rushed, brandishing rods. Mager's gaze flared. Within minutes shackles clanged against stone, overseers gagged with their own masks. Night fell with volcanic haze blotting stars. Equinox perched atop Dragonbone Spire, scanning east, where the sea glimmered dull pewter. A low rumble shivered hulls. Far off under moon, water bulged, then fell, an exhale of unseen cavern. Mager gathered Aenys and Lysara in torch circle. Ocean gate stirs, he said. We descend tomorrow. You, he pointed at Lysara. Secure perimeter. No vessel leaves harbor. You, he touched Aenys' shoulder. Follow the pulse. Lead us true, or we drown in shadow. Aenys nodded, swallowing. Before dawn, rosy gray, they ventured inland atop a cracked basalt highway, leading into the smoking mountains. Cinders carpeted approach, heat radiating through boots. Equinox scouted overhead, silhouette rippling against sulfur sky. Twice they passed skeletons fused into roadbed. Victims of cataclysm, centuries old. Finally, they reached a fissure belching steam, wide enough to swallow a modest keep. Within, a stair spiraled downward. Newly carved, steps of frost glass impervious to magma spatter. Someone had built this descent recently. They left half the guard to secure rim. Mager and Aenys, backed by Ten and Burgard, began descent. Equinox clung to cliff, then folded wings, squeezing through fissure after them, heating stone to black glaze. Depth swallowed sound, except drip of condensation, and faint basso heartbeat. Slow. Aenys hummed, pitch-matched beat. They emerged upon a ledge overlooking cathedral-sized cavern lit by rills of lava. At its center rolled a sea of black mercury, water laced with void glass dust. Floating above mirror surface was colossal egg, 3 times Balerian skull, shell-mottled frost-white and ember-red swirling like living storm. Shards of dawn glass prison protruded from shell as though hammered, yet none pierced interior. 9 dragonbone pillars from Iskatar ringed egg, each inscribed with froststar runes linking to chains that sank into mercury. Aenys' breath left. They built womb for Nullworm's reflection. He turned to Mager. Look. Inside, shell's semi-translucent swirl coalesced silhouette of serpentine coil, double-headed. 1 mirror of Equinox, 1 void shard. Familiar but stranger. Mager stepped forward. What, mother birds, too? At his words, egg pulsed. A crack veined across shell. Lava surged, cooled, leaving basalt stepping stones leading toward dais beneath egg. Voidcraft unnatural. Aenys drew harp, plucked test cord. Cavern answered echo pitched lower, devouring partials. Equilibrium faltered, void dominated. Mager unsheathed blackfire. We cannot let it wake. We sunder womb, melt mercury, drown embryo in balanced flame. He signaled in Burgard. They lobbed dawn glass grenades. Explosions spattered frostfire, but chains absorbed heat, channeling into pillars which glowed snow blue. Egg's crack widened. Fissures bled silvery mist. Echoes boomed like drums in water. Equinox screeched from above. She dove, rotated, unleashed dual breath. Frost vaporized mercury. Red beam then shattered crust. But shards flew upward, swirling around dragon, slicing wing membranes. Equinox cried pain, spirals staggering. Aenys raced onto stepping stones, harp cords weaving net to deflect shards. Notes shattered glass mid-air, falling into magma trenches. Yet the egg continued to open, peeling like flour. From interior rose nullworm larvae, but not hollow mirror this time. Inside simmered living tissue, scaled prismatic like Equinox, but veins pumping void ichor. 2 sets of eyes snapped open. One frost blue, one ember gold. It opened twin jaws and hissed a note that unspooled reality into threads, a chord with every possibility. Maegor charged across stones, black fire overhead. He leapt onto dais, planted blade into larva's shoulder. The wound fountain night fluid. His sword drank some but sputtered as void corroded frost gold edge. Larva shrieked, tail whipped, sending Maegor crashing onto chain pillar where armor dented. He rose, battered but burning. Ember guards swarmed, axes flaring. The beast's mirror scales reflected attacks an instant before they landed, predicting arcs, twisting to redirect. One guard's blow rebounded, cleaving comrade. Aenys' song faltered, replaced by raw scream. Maegor, Lysara, hearing through echoing fissure, led reinforcements down, arriving as larva coiled to lunge at Aenys. She hurled spear. The tip, forged of null steel and Alyssa's balanced flux, struck larva's second head, severing right horn. Instant disorientation allowed Maegor to slam hammer into wound, embedding blackfire deeper. Larva convulsed, blood sizzled on magma. But wound did not close. Instead, void blood spilled, flowed along chains, racing up pillars toward Iskatar, like veins restoring body far away. Maegor grasped dread. If pillars feeded energy, we must break circuit. Emberguard scaled columns, driving wedges. Yet void blood hardened to glass around their hands, fusing them. Sacrifices made, they exploded charges. Columns shattered. Chain tension snapped, sending egg remnants collapsing into mercury pool. Larva floundered, shrieking. Equinox glided low despite torn wings. She latched talons on larva's spine. Chest pulsed, prism lights dancing. She began siphoning, drawing void blood into herself, converting through balanced lungs. Her scales darkened, then brightened. The larva shrank, hollowing, mirror flesh collapsing inward until only husk remained. Equinox roared triumph yet agony. Half her body glimmered with rivers of silver wound. Aenys clambered onto dais, harp strings thrumming automatic. His melody wove around dragon, easing convulsions, guiding conversion. Maegor, kneeling, pressed bloodied hand to Equinox's shoulder, murmuring wordless reassurance. When final drop siphoned, cavern exhaled. Lava subdued to whisper. Mercury pool turned clear water. Eggshell fragments melted. Equinox slumped, cradled by Maegor's arms. Scales reflected balanced dawn, void traces gone. Lysara retrieved blackfire from husk. Blade bore new pattern, inner line of silver swirling. S-word drinks hunger, she observed. Aenys wiped tears and sweat. Iskatar pillars destroyed, supply line cut. No more womb. Maegor observed mirror water. His reflection looked older, scarred, but eyes bright. One womb remains, fear in hearts. We break that with truth. Months later at King's Landing, the great amphitheater overflowed. Citizens from free cities, the Dothraki Sea, even far Ibn, jammed tiered benches under stained glass canopy. At center stage, 100-foot mural spun slowly. Dawn glass prism wheels rotating on cogs, casting shafts of red-blue across audience like drifting stardust. Aenys stepped onto dais, wearing simple linen-dyed lilac, no crown. Harp, floated on strap. He plucked cord. Silence glazed crowd. Then he spoke, not with royal decree, but story. He told of bleeding keys, of mirror womb, of ember and frost walking hand in hand into living void. He named fallen guards, sang their names into hall. He confessed his own moment when hunger's whisper tempted his voice. And he ended thus. Hunger is love that forgot its name. We remind it by refusing to starve one another. Maegor strode out, hammer slung, black fire sheathed. He drove haft into marble once. Not threat, anchor. No fortress stands if hearts decay inside. We forge not walls but windows. He gestured overhead. Stained glass shaped by Alyssa depicted equinox balancing scales above cracked egg, dissolving into dawn. See through them. A hush followed, broken when Alyssa descended astride equinox, healed wings gleaming. Dragon folded gracefully, lowering head so smallest child in front row could stroke warm scale. Applause thundered like surf meeting cliff. Years turned. New houses rose along narrow sea, built of fused dawn glass bricks, tinted jade and ruby. Turned coin courts, settled disputes by debates whose losing side hosted feasts for winners, symbolic merging of opposite. Prism scholars discovered how to trap lightning in glass rods, powering lighthouses beyond any pyre. Nullworm's chrysalis at Vane remained quiescent, singing its seasons. Aenys aged into silver patriarch, teaching choirs under olives. Maegor patrolled seas aboard Dawn's Edge to second, now flight-capable via maglev masts, chasing pirates who still coveted frost relics. Alyssa retired from molten caldera, turning laboratories to gardens where dawn glass wind chimes balanced microclimates, growing mangoes in crownlands, frost months, tulips in Dorna's dunes. One crisp winter dawn, the siblings gathered again on terrace, where first vow tempered. Equinox lounged vast, cradling half-grown whelp. Hatchling of her own clutch, scales pure pearl until choice carved colored flux. Aenys poured wine, voice husky with age yet melodic. Maegor's beard flecked iron with snow, but grip still crushed goblet. Alyssa's hair completely white now, but eyes bright. They gazed at horizon. Above, aurora painted lens smear that never stilled, sometimes crimson dominated, sometimes azure, yet always met, merged, danced. Maegor raised cup. To the hinge that never locks. Aenys clinked. To the song that never ends. Alyssa tapped rim to both. To the fire that learns to shiver, and the frost that dares to dream of dawn. Equinox rumbled assent. The hatchling echoed, voice like distant bells. Below cliffs, ocean breathed. Balance endured. Not perfect. Not permanent. Alive.